do the group and have all the individuals. Yeah, we could have them do that. I guess that's my cue. We're done.
I think so.
Have we heard from Lisa? All right, let's go ahead and start our work session. I'd like to welcome everybody. We have a lot of exciting things to go through, so we'll get started. I would like to announce the following announcements of things coming up. So next week's meeting will be again up here and starting at 6 o'clock for our business meeting. Then don't forget, spring break is coming up, March 29th through April 2nd. We will be closed. April 6th is election day. And then April 8th, we have our business meeting. Yes, sorry. I had to think about the dates. Seemed early. All right, and that's all I have. So moving on to 2.02, we have our elementary goals update.
Thank you, Ms. Lonis. So Dr. Stewart is going to lead us through the elementary goals update. If you remember the last time that you heard from the elementary principals, it was October. And so we'll be sharing data on the September, October versus the recent assessments, January, February assessments.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for waiting on the presentation. Well, while we're waiting, I'll just go over a little bit of, let you know what I'm going to be handing our principals when they're speaking. So if you see me passing them something, is that they have 2 minutes left. And then their time is up here. So you'll kind of know the teacher came out in me.
Color coordinated and everything.
Yeah.
A little visual, you know. Isn't it? Okay. Working on it.
Apologies.
That's why it's not working. It was waiting for Lisa to show up.
There you go. There you go. Cool. Got it.
You clicked on secondary. It's elementary. Yeah, yeah. That's fine. Let me see secondary.
That's in. There an elementary.
Sorry about that. Right, hold on 1 second. Just a second. No. Just a second.
So it's elementary goals update, but I don't see it. Or- Yeah. You can just click on that, yeah. Okay, here we go.
Apologies.
Okay. Okay. I'm used to seeing it larger, but that's okay.
I was gonna
So,
say, can we take it out of presenter view because it comes smaller?
yeah,
Is.
okay, here we go.
Thank you.
So Rainier School District works in collaboration with parents and the community to develop leaders who are recognized for academic excellence and high levels of integrity. Our mission is to ensure all students think critically, solve problems, and learn in a nurturing environment that prepares them for success in a diverse global society. As it relates to our equity statement, we want to continue to include different cultures in our curriculum and reinforce strategies that embrace the culture of all of our students. You will hear many examples of how our schools are embedding trauma-informed practices in the school and encouraging students to participate in activities that builds positive relationships, which helps build an authentic understanding of other cultures. As it relates to our 3 goals in Ritenour School District, I am just going to give a brief overview because our administrators are going to provide some details for you. As it relates to our academic achievement, which is one of our goals, is to ensure all students meet their personal, academic, and career goals. We focus on equitable access and outcomes for all of our students, support our staff with high-quality professional development and instructional coaching, which models how to use data and support the outcomes for students. Our main goals have focused on the integration of technology, strategies to engage students, wellness teams support students and families with resources. We provide lessons, We provide lessons that support the decrease in instructional time by collaboratively identifying important priority standards. Modules are aligned to these high leverage priority standards. We will continue the PBTE process and walkthroughs that provide evidence of fidelity to instruction. As it relates to college and career readiness skills, which is our second goal, we build in processes to identify and provide support to students who may be struggling in school. We continue to provide individual plans of study to guide and motivate students to continue coursework aligned to their interests and their career aspirations. Attendance has been an area of opportunity this year through distance learning. It's been a little difficult to engage some of our students online, but we've been working very hard to do so. As you heard back in October, our wellness teams meet weekly, make phone calls and home visits to support our families and help our students transition back to school or increase the engagement in their learning. Our teachers have had professional development on how to engage students in a distance learning environment, encouraging students to briefly turn on their cameras, engage in activities to connect with students, and embed technology to engage students are just a few examples. Our goal is to ensure that all students engage in learning that is relevant and rigorous. I wanted to give you a little example of how we have tracked data this year and how we've tracked the standards to see if our students are mastering certain standards. You're going to hear about iExcel, which is a supplemental learning platform tonight, which is utilized to support the learning for students. The Curriculum and Instruction Department has aligned standards of this program to modules and pacing in the curriculum. Teachers are encouraged to use this program to provide practice and personalize the learning for students. Teachers are encouraged to remediate, reteach, and accelerate the learning for students. This slide shows how we compare the data collected on the January evaluate, which is focused on subtracting numbers within 1,000 in 3rd grade. When many of our students practiced this skill on iExcel, the mastery was at 45%, as opposed to evaluate where it was at 52%. Not exactly equal, but close. So we are seeing a correlation between the outcomes on iExcel and evaluate, and we're using that as an instructional tool. Students across the district have answered about 5,885,701 questions on iExcel. Of the 205,169 skills that students have practiced, they have reached proficiency on 112,252 of those skills, which is 55% of the skills. I wanted to give you a view and an example of the modules.
We don't have the slide you just gave us. You just showed us.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you were logged in from the beginning, you have the middle school and high school. Can you try refreshing and make sure that it starts with the elementary on the first page?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's okay.
I found I am looking at it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just,
Slide 6.
literally went out, and then went back in again. There it goes, because it was in the middle school and high school, so now they've updated it.
Okay. So this is an example of the modules. We've been talking about this in October and throughout the year, but I just wanted to give you an example of what the C&I department and many of our teachers have been working to create this year. They've been created in grades kindergarten through 8 and identifies high leverage skills to address during the pandemic. All of the standards have not been covered this year because of the loss of instructional time, but efforts have been put in place to identify key skills that are needed to build on student learning in the future. After receiving feedback from teachers during the first semester, curriculum and instruction added support for asynchronous learning, for students at home, more online formative assessments, as well as more support for learning for our RVA teachers and students. Providing this structure has helped provide consistent expectations as well as support during the pandemic. We have received positive feedback about the modules from our teachers, and this is one of the practices that we're looking to continue in the future. So at this point, this is our principals will follow this template that will focus on ELA. And you're looking at the estimated proficiency of students across the district on this slide, but they will cover the estimated proficiency of students in their buildings. If you look at the two numbers under group, you will see that the first number is the October number of students that took the test, and that second number is the February number of students that took the test. So this slide shows the ELA achievement district-wide. Our elementary administrators will show the data for their schools. It shows a slight drop in scores in ELA. We know that the engagement for students were lower this year than in the past. And our goal is to provide a more robust summer school to make up for some of the learning loss for our students this year. Math is an area of opportunity. We have covered less standards this year and focused on our high leverage priority standards. Our goal, again, is to provide more support in math as a district at the end of this year and next year, and also to make sure that we are providing support and learning during the summer for our students. So cohort data of the estimated proficiency of students 3rd through 5th grade. And it shows the academic achievement for the students, a 3rd grader, and then what they would score, and the 4th grader, what they scored in the 5th grade, their estimated proficiency. So the administrators will talk about their 3 to 5 action steps for academic growth for our students. And our social emotional growth indicators show that there are many students that have not had 2 referrals. So our data is looking very good in the social emotional area. And our principals will describe the 3 to 5 action steps that they have to support the social emotional growth of students. This shows the college and career readiness, which is our grade 3 ELA scores from February last year to February this year as a district. And our administrators will share the 3 to 5 action steps that they have to support college and career readiness in their schools. As it relates to attendance, there has been a drop in attendance. We have worked hard to engage our students, and we will continue to do that and build connections with students. Principals will identify 3 to 5 action steps that they have to support student attendance. So this is the order of the presentations. Administrators will have 10 minutes and 5 minutes for questions. Are there any questions before we start the presentations from the buildings? Thank you.
Good evening. It is so nice to see all of you. I missed out on the opportunity to join you in the fall due to having a baby, so I am glad to be here this evening. I just want to start out and begin by stating that this year has been unlike any other year in my short educational journey of 14 years, and I know we can all say the same. And I just am just taken aback and so impressed with the incredible resilience of this district, my staff at Marvin, and my little Marvin stars. And it's just been an incredible thing to see. And amidst the challenges that this pandemic has brought us this year, my staff has remained dedicated and committed to meeting the social emotional needs of our students while keeping a strong focus on learning at Marvin this school year. So I'm honored and thrilled to be here this evening to share our action steps and our data as it relates to our improvement plan. I'm going to scroll through some of our data this year and looking at the comparison data from October to February. I'm going to spend the bulk of my time discussing our action steps related to each one of these. You will notice as you look through our evaluate data, our estimated proficiency has taken a dip in February for both ELA as well as math. And this would be our cohort growth data as well. Again, a decline in those scores. If I can put your focus on our action steps related to academic growth, we have continued our weekly PLC meetings, our professional learning community meetings, and data teamwork this year, which involves our instructional coach, our classroom teachers, and administrators. This year, we've relied heavily on focusing on student progress on the priority standards that have been identified through the instructional modules this year. We relied on a variety of data sources such as IXL, Evaluate, and the BAR, or Being a Reader, which is our new reading program where we have some reading data for our students. Based on the IXL diagnostic assessments, we are able to see the skill recommendations that the program has recommended for our students, for our individual students. And teachers have taken that data, aligned those to the priority standards that are taught in the instructional modules, and assigned those to students. We've done that to individualize and personalize instruction for our students. And so we've identified those areas where students have learning gaps. And the teachers are able to assign those skills for those students to work independently and at their own pace to either fill those learning gaps or to accelerate the learning of those individual students. Being a Reader was our new reading curriculum this year, our reading program for kindergarten through third grade. It's been a blessing. It's been what we've been hoping for and wishing and praying for. And this reading program provides those foundational skills for our primary students in the areas of phonological awareness, phonics, and sight word instruction. And we've relied heavily on that. This program provides some level assessments in which we're able to see where students fall within those three areas and then provide small group instruction for those students. Our 4th and 5th grade students have been engaged in reading conferences with their teachers this year and have had great success. Teachers are meeting one-on-one and conferring with their students, listening to them read, taking running records, and then pointing out the successes that the students are having individually with their reading, but then also setting goals with those students and pointing out areas of opportunity for them to work on for the next time that they sit down and confer with them. We've relied heavily also on student support team meetings this year, as in the past, in which we are meeting with families, interventionists who work with our students, our EL teachers, our classroom teachers, and our counselors to look at how students are progressing in their core instruction as well as within their tier 2 and tier 3 support classrooms through the RTI process, and using that data to make instructional decisions for those students and next steps for those students. You'll see the Elite 8 meetings. That's just a fun name that we came up with. We started this, I believe it was last year, with to increase our collaboration and partnership with special school district. And so the Elite 8 really stands for the 8 members that sit down and meet together twice a month. That consists of myself, my assistant principal, our special school district area coordinator, as well as my resource teachers through SSD in my building. We meet twice a month where we look at and discuss students with IEP goals and their progress on those goals. We discuss some of the strategies that they are working on with their SSD case managers. And then we also discuss, those case managers also push into the gen ed classroom regularly, where they're able to observe their students that they work with and how they're responding to the areas that they're working on related to their goals in their IEP, if they're applying those strategies that they're learning in the gen ed classroom. And this also includes our resource teachers who sit down and collaborate with our Ritenour gen ed teachers, talking specifically about those students with IEP goals, but also looking at any other students that we may have identified some struggles in some areas of concern. And so we've relied heavily on those resource teachers and their expertise, swapping out instructional strategies and problem solving, and really working together. And lastly, on this slide is one of our action steps. Marvin has established an equity team this year. And so we're just in the beginning stages of it, but we have participated in the district equity learning meetings, and then bringing that learning back to our buildings, starting with our equity committee, and then sprinkling that into our staff meetings as well. So I look forward to continuing that work. So looking at our social emotional growth indicators, you see we have 6 referrals this year. 4 of those were bus referrals, where our students were taking their masks off and engaging in a snack on the bus. And 2 of those were technology misuse that we ran into the beginning to middle of the school year. One thing that I wanted to point out with the discipline, we've not seen much discipline at all this year. And I think one of the unintended consequences of having the hybrid schedule and the small cohorts has really encouraged our kids to interact very differently this year. And so you've got a classroom of, 12 kids at the very most, and they're stuck with that cohort all day. But it's so interesting to see their interactions and their relationships as they have developed this year, getting to know one another, engaging in, organized play out at recess. And so it's just been a really, really neat thing to see. Our action steps related to social emotional growth, as Dr. Stewart mentioned, we do have a wellness team that we utilize to support our students, our staff, and our families. And this looks like for our students, we have morning announcements every single morning that my assistant principal kind of spearheads. And so through those morning announcements, we're offering tips for students, wellness tips for students, self-care tips for students, shout outs for students. We have our positive office referrals that we do weekly, and where we're discussing our PBIS character traits, a Marvin leader shines, and we do that each and every morning. For our staff, we have Wellness Wednesdays where we are offering wellness tips, again, self-care tips. Sometimes it's just a fun email with a funny meme to get our teachers to laugh and, take a load off and enjoy that. For our parents, we have a monthly newsletter that we do send out, and we do have a wellness section for our parents. So maybe some tips for at home to help with some of the scheduling, getting their kids on that routine, in a good routine, and those sorts of things, as well as a list of resources that our social worker and our counseling department have put together for them. Our counselors have started their second step lessons, which is their new social emotional learning curriculum, which they're going into the classroom and teaching social emotional learning lessons to our students. We've also, while we were still in phase 3, began the I Need a Counselor form, in which the students were able to identify if they needed a counselor to speak with and meet with. And then we have continued our restorative and community circles, mostly the community circles this year, in which we're engaging those in our morning meetings as well as our staff meetings. And then we threw together a staff jam board this year just to acknowledge and recognize our colleagues and great things that they've done or said, or someone who made you smile, and we do share those out at our staff meetings. All right, I will address college and career readiness and the steps that we have put into place this year. Every year we do hold a career fair. Last year we began discussions about doing it every other year career fair, and this year we are discussing a virtual career fair in which presenters would record, and we'll be able to share those out in a student-friendly manner. Our counselors are continuing their career lessons, and then we do continue our weekly positive office referrals, in which teachers are nominating students who are demonstrating our leadership traits. All right, goal 3, attendance. This has been our biggest challenge this year with everything going on with the pandemic. We do, move forward to the action steps. Our attendance team meets twice a week. And through attendance, we've seen different waves with attendance this year when we were fully phase 3, all virtual, teaching professional development opportunities for teachers to increase that student engagement and participation. Then we moved into phase 2 where we had some of the kids coming in. So we had some challenges around attendance with the hybrid schedule and just helping families get acclimated to that 2-day schedule every other day, the Friday virtual, while also maintaining high attendance and participation with our virtual students. If I could sum it all up, one of the things that we look at is our RVA classrooms, which are our virtual classrooms. Our teachers have set great expectations for what high engagement and participation looks like. Like Dr. Stewart mentioned, we're going to do a camera check. We're going to do a mic check at the beginning of each class. We're going to hold some sort of a morning meeting so we can see each other's faces. And our teachers have made great accommodations for students, understanding that there may be some students that don't want their camera on the entire time. But as long as they're participating, putting answers into the chat box, speaking into their mic, turning in their work, that we know that they're engaged and they're participating. We've had students that have just logged on, cameras off, mics off, and that's where our attendance teams have really taken some work. We meet twice a week, we're making phone calls, we're making home visits. We've actually made 35 home visits this school year. And for those home visits, we're providing supports and resources for families trying to figure out what the barrier is for getting their students to school or logged on and highly active and participating in their virtual classroom. So that leads me into our student support team meetings. We've got families that are saying, you know what, the virtual environment is just not working for my child. Can we talk about bringing them in person? So we would hold that student support team meeting with the families, the classroom teacher, a counselor, and an administrator, discuss the student's progress and the reason for the request, and then we make a team decision on what is going to be in this child's best interest, and we make that move. We've held 110 student support team meetings this year to swap students' cohorts from either virtual to hybrid or hybrid to virtual. I'm running out of time, but one more thing I will add for this one is we've added the Friday raffle, which is to increase our Friday virtual attendance. And so in the morning, the teachers will, or any student that's logged in during that 9 to 11 period, they get their name in a raffle. In the afternoon, if they're logged in from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, they get a name in the raffle. And then it goes on the morning announcements. We pull their name, and then they get a personal delivery from Dr. Thurman or myself with a fun little baggie of goodies if their name gets pulled. I apologize for going over. So I want to explain the pictures. So you'll see here 4 pictures. All the way on the left is one of our students, our English learner students, they were learning about their Arctic animal unit. And so she has some fake snow. She's practicing writing her name and other things in the fake snow. My cute little guy here in the middle was also part of the Arctic animal unit, in which they were doing an experiment to explore how blubber works and discussing how blubber keeps animals warm. Here in the middle, you'll see our 3rd grade class, and they were engaging in creating their own 3-note melody on a mallet instrument and then notating that on paper for their teacher. And then on the bottom right is one of my 1st grade RVA teachers, and so she was holding a virtual birthday celebration for one of her kiddos. Any questions or comments?
During your virtual career day, what careers did you talk about?
We are actually in the process of planning that. So we have not yet held that or fully planned that.
So Nikki, when you look at your attendance data, are you seeing a difference in attendance virtual versus in person, or is it similar? What do you see in the data?
For both, the challenge has been in both. The challenge with the virtual is our teachers are having to really decipher, is the student engaged and participating if they're logged in? In most cases, the students are logged in, their cameras are just off and there's zero participation. The hybrid, I think a lot of the struggle, and I didn't get a chance to mention it, it was about the end of November, beginning of December, right when we were getting ready to open the survey up for parents to make a change in their learning, students' learning platforms. I had about 10 families that told me they were hybrid families. I'm not sending my kid to school. I want them in the virtual academy. And at that point, we only had a couple of weeks left for that until winter break. And then we were going virtual into the second semester. So we worked with those families and developed plans with them to keep them home because we were not able to put them in an RVA room, and we didn't feel that that would be in the students' best interest when we were getting ready to switch everything up for second semester. So we developed those plans, ensuring that they understood the asynchronous work and that they would log on Fridays. And we did that until they were able to get them switched.
So the virtual attendance wasn't just simply a student is absent if they're not logged in. It could potentially be a student is there but is not engaged.
Absolutely, yes. And we did follow that very closely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to share a little bit about Wyland. And I completely agree with Ms. Ottenreith. This is a year unlike any others, and I've been in education a really long time. And while there have been a lot of challenges, there have also been a lot of celebrations. So I hope to share that with you tonight, both of those. I know I shared with you last time that Riding the Wave is our theme this year, and it's been very appropriate. That's what we've been doing all year. So we'll start out with the data, and very similar to what Ms. Ottenreith said, this is not the data that we hope to see, but we also know that we are looking at those multiple data sources that she mentioned, the IExcel, the Being a Reader assessments, the formative checks along the way, and student work, so that we can really make good decisions about teaching and learning. And that's the same for math. I think it's interesting as we look at the data, there are some areas where we've had some increases and some decreases. And so that's why this year it's been really, really important to look at multiple data sources. When we look at the cohort growth, this has been an interesting area as well because we have had a lot of mobility. I know that's true in all of our schools. Just this week and last week, we've had 6 new students come to us. And we have some students, we have one moving to California next week, another one moving into another district. And so I think when we look at this data, it's important to note that we're not always looking at the same students. And so it's really important that we really are looking at individual student growth and also where there are opportunities for support for students. So when we look at the action steps, we are also working with PLCs. And I know last time, both Mr. Ewing and I shared how appreciative we are to have an instructional coach at our building. And Melanie Turnage is doing a wonderful job of really getting to know the staff and the students and their needs. And so we meet weekly, we're looking at data together and really making sure that we're not just looking at the data, that we're analyzing it, that we're really looking at the story that it tells about individual students, about classrooms, so that we are making sure that all students are making growth. Again, we are looking at IExcel, and we're in a unique position that last year, our 4th and 5th grade teachers did a pilot, and so they were very aware of the ELA IExcel. So this year, they've been excited to use the math as well, and all of our other teachers were able to do that last year. But I know I shared last time, we have many, many new staff members at Wyland. So it's really been helping our new staff understand IXL and all the many wonderful reports that can be used, and also really helping the students understand it so that they can track their own data as well. For being a reader, our teachers have given very positive feedback. They are very excited about the resource, really looking forward to the additional resources that we'll receive next year, but they really feel like it's engaging, it's very easy to differentiate for our students, and it's really helping our students to engage in text. And when we look at parent engagement this year, that's been a little interesting to think about as well, but we've worked really hard to be creative about how to do that. So one of the things we did recently was Zoom into learning, and we held a family learning night where parents could come into different Zoom links and learn about math games or IXL. Our library media specialist was there to show how to check out books from the St. Louis County Library. So our attendance was not what we had hoped it would be, but it was definitely a good start. And I think some of the feedback that we heard was some of our families liked having the opportunity for it to be on Zoom, so they didn't have to rush into school, pick up their children, and get back home. And so we talked about how in the future, as we are able to welcome families back in the building, we'd like to still offer an option that students can Zoom in. And that has been true for our FINS meetings also, and I'll share a little bit more about that. We also have a building equity team, and it's been really strong this year. We are up to 10 members that are the leadership team, and most of them are attending the monthly equity meetings with the district. And then we are bringing that information back to the school. A couple of weeks ago, we had the Game Changers come, and that was really interesting because we always, as administrators, we hear from the Game Changers a lot, but really thinking about how important it is for elementary teachers to hear that high school perspective. And the Game Changers focused on what they wish their elementary teachers would have known or would have done for them when they were in elementary school. We also have created action plans this year, and we appreciate Dr. Stryker and Ms. McNulty jumped into one of our Zoom meetings to share some of the work that was happening there and got our staff really excited about creating plans. And in K1 and 2, they're more about like feelings and kindness and empathy. But our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers, they really dug into the curriculum, into the resources, making sure that they're really looking at those windows and mirrors that students are seeing representations of themselves and of others. And also really focusing on making sure that people of color are represented in the resources and in the text. And if they're not, they are supplementing that. So that has been really exciting to see this year. So also, we are not high on referrals, and we just got a second one today. And interestingly enough, it's from the same person who had this first one of our students in the refocus room. And I agree with Ms. Fontenreef. It's been really exciting this year to see some of our students, especially those who've been in the refocus room, most of them have come back to hybrid learning, and they are really aware of their behaviors and of what they want their behaviors to look like. So that has really been really wonderful to see. I think for us, a big piece was community building, because what happened when 4th and 5th grade came back and we had an additional RVA teacher, we have students from almost every other building. And so that was a really wonderful opportunity to do a lot of community building in our RVA, and also in hybrid settings, because they were all new students, in every single classroom was different. So we really have had a lot of starts to school this year, and each time we have really taken that time to build community with students and also with the parents as well. For counseling lessons, we continue Second Step, which you heard about. And then also our part-time counselor, she has done SCB universals. And so those have included the brain, zones of regulation, windows of stress tolerance, and also mindfulness. And that's been really helpful as well. And also because we have so many new staff. We have weekly SCB leadership team meetings. This includes our counselors, our social worker. And again, this has been really nice because we can Zoom the staff that we share across buildings who would not always be able to be there in the building are able to jump into the Zoom meetings, and that has been really helpful. Also, our school psychologist is a part of that team and our refocus room teacher. And we're always looking at individual plans, but we're also looking at our systems and our structures that we have in place. Our tier 2 interventions, these come from the revised student support team process that we put in place. And this year, we're really looking at mentoring. We have always done check in, check out. We really built upon our groups this year. And now we're really looking at that formal mentoring, which we've done a lot of informal mentoring in the past, but making sure that some of our students, especially some of our new students, have really had a challenge really getting to know people if they were in our 4th and 5th grade students in the RVA setting for so long. So mentoring's been really, really helpful with that. And then I touched a little bit about FINS meetings because that's where we're sharing a lot of information with our parents about social emotional well-being, physical well-being, virtual learning. And now we have done a meeting on equity and we'll do another one, which is what they asked for next month. So our college and career ready, we were really happy to see an increase in data there. And then for our college and career readiness plans, right now we're learning about colleges and universities. Our counselor, Mr. Campo, has created a slideshow where the staff is putting in information about not only what university they attended and what their degree was in, but what were they proud of when they were at college? What were some experiences they had? And also, what's another degree or another certificate that they might have been interested in? Continuing on goal setting, spirit days, we've had opportunities for students to think about what they want to be when they grow up so they can learn from each other as well. Our partnership with Maryville University continues. We are also planning a career fair, and the way we're planning to do it is to have videos sent in by community members, by our parents. A lot of our staff have said that their spouses could make videos as well, so that then they can be grouped into the different paths, and then students can make sure that they can view those. And also we're hoping that our families will do that with them. So our attendance, you heard from Ms. Ottenreith, we have the same issues that we are working on as well. We definitely have those attendance team meetings, and a big part of our attendance team meetings this year are having interpreters involved so that we can call our students who need help with the translating of English, and we make sure that one of our school staff are in those meetings as well. We have also done a lot of home visits, and they have been very helpful. And then just really having that support from the wellness team. We're also trying on Fridays to do fun activities. We did an assembly one Friday and we had a lot of our students online. We are now doing buddies with virtual classrooms, and that drew a lot of our students to come on as well. And so just to sum it up here, I know I'm out of time. Up in the left-hand corner is Miss Williams, one of our 3rd grade teachers. And for Black History Month, we always will decorate bulletin boards. And this year, our RVA students did virtual bulletin boards on slides. And Miss Williams, they did a whole bulletin board on Harris Stowe University. And Harris Stowe sent the kids backpacks and pens, so that's what they're holding up there. Underneath that picture, we have one of our 2nd grade students, who I know one of you will recognize. He is dressed up as a 3rd grade teacher that his sister and brother had. And so that's Mr. Sandman there. So that was kind of fun to see. In the middle is Miss Johnson, one of our kindergarten teachers, who she came and talked about writing conferences for School of the Month. And you see her doing a reading group there. So I think our teachers have been incredibly creative about how to meet with groups of students, how to confer from 6 feet apart. Up in the right-hand corner, we have a kindergartner who's working on being a reader. These are his high-frequency words, and you can see how proud he is of them. I thought that was just a really neat picture. And then on the right, on the bottom there, I think, as we've dealt with some of the challenges, I've also really seen our teachers making sure that they create those joyful moments with students as well. So that was a fun picture to see. They were out with their masks, but also catching snowflakes on their tongues. So any questions?
I did have a question for you.
Sure.
You were talking about the students from more aware of their behaviors and everything. So what is it that we do to make sure that that keeps going? You know, so when next year we come back and we have more students in the classroom, what is it that we do to keep that awareness so that we can keep those referrals down?
So that's a great question. Our teachers have been asking that as well, because we definitely want that to continue. And honestly, I've been asking the students, like, you know, what is it? And so one of them yesterday was waiting for a cab for a very long time. So we had a lot of time to talk. And he was telling me that he doesn't like being mad anymore, that he doesn't want to be mad. And so he just being aware of that feeling. And I think that part of it comes from the instruction that has been done, whether it's through the refocus room, in the classroom with circles. We've done a lot about feelings. I really love that the first grade team for their equity plan was talking about feelings, because that really helps when we are able to express that. And some of our students really struggle with that. So I think it's really taking that time to have those conversations, to listen to the students, but there is definitely a piece of it that has to do with the smaller class size, because all of our classes are smaller, and but we know that we can create those opportunities as well, whether it's through breaks or having them have those groups. And so I think that's a great question, and we are thinking on that and getting information from our students too.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Very happy to be here. You probably already heard this, but it's been a tough year. And so I won't be breaking any news when I tell you that our data is not where we had hoped it would be looking forward from this point last year. So I'll take you through that real quick. So our estimated proficiency showed minimal gains to no gains, even some losses in some places. Looking at the months there, a lot happened, obviously, between October and February. Some things that we're not measuring here, but that we all felt. Math, the story's just a little bit more stark. In the cohort proficiency is, again, minimal gains and in some cases losses. I was telling my good friend and esteemed colleague, Tim Stryker, who's back here on deck, and many of you know, probably all of you know, that he's a chef. And so we were having this conversation about trying to talk our teachers down, who were very upset. Obviously, they were upset last time we talked, and they're still upset about where we are with things. And it was pretty simple. I said, you know, if you have a certain recipe that you make and you use certain fresh ingredients and you have a certain technique and you need a certain amount of time to work the recipe, and someone comes and tells you to make the same thing, but with none of the ingredients, none of the time, and none of the support, it shouldn't be a surprise that it doesn't taste the same. And if someone expected that, then they probably didn't respect the process that you had before. So our focus at Marion has been to think about this year in terms of opportunity. Don't waste a good crisis. And so as we look forward, we said, what will be our best practices that we need to return to, and what will be our next practices that we need to move on to? And we spent this whole year focused on that. How can we reconstitute the things that we know especially based on this year, are going to make us successful and make our students successful? And what are the things that we can move on to now that we have an opportunity to do some things differently? And so everything that you'll see in terms of action plan is going to be aligned to one of those two things. So one of the next practices that we're focused on for academic growth is based in our competency-based learning initiative. As a district, we were moving that direction. I talked to you all a little bit about that last time. And so since I last spoke to you, we began our pilots. We have 3 grade levels piloting in person our playlists, and we have one group that meets on Mondays in the evenings at 6 to 7 p.m. Over Starbucks. We call it Frappuccinos and Flight Plans. And we talk about how we can implement these things in a fully virtual environment. they're all RVA teachers, and the challenges are obviously a little bit different if you have to program all this online. Another next practice that we plan to move forward to in this past, we've discussed it with our colleagues here at Central Office, and it's gone through our leadership team, and we're moving ahead with it, is our bilingual education pilot. We have actually three EL certified teachers, and one of them is a bilingual speaker who brought the idea to us at a time we were trying to figure out what we would do. Those of you who don't know, Marion Elementary School has the highest population of EL learners in St. Louis. We are second only. There's a district in southwest Missouri, almost at the Oklahoma border, who has more than us, but other than that, it's us. And so we have a lot of students who are going to have a superpower in a few years and that they'll be bilingual, but right now it presents a challenge because they're first graders who are not fluent in either language yet. And so as those students matriculate to second grade, part of our plan is to have a bilingual classroom that will focus on the needs of 20 tier 1 and tier 2 EL learners. They'll be learning in both languages. And when you speak to them, especially if you know a little bit of Spanish and speak to them in Spanish, you know very quickly that they're very sharp and they just need an opportunity to be able to express themselves. And the added benefit is that the connections will be able to build with parents who are also not necessarily comfortable in English as being their second language. We'll be able to unlock them also. In addition to that, next practices that the district has been supporting us, obviously the full implementation of Being a Reader program, which the ladies before me spoke to, and our continued use of IXL and our literacy coach, Melanie Turnage, that Lisa and I share. Social emotional indicators. We have had one office referral this year, very early in the year. 100% of the students have 2 or less referrals. And the ladies also spoke to this, but it has been interesting that in addition to not having as many bodies to fill the space, there's less emotion in the space. And so kids, when they're feeling a struggle, have more room to express themselves and get attention from the teachers and receive empathy from their peers and work through their issues in the classroom. So that has been very helpful. It's a unintended benefit of the time. Of course, we'd rather have everybody back, but that is a benefit. Things that we plan to continue. So a best practice that we're going to continue is our social emotional behavior supports. But 2 next practices. Community circles is something Dr. Stewart and her team started last year that we have suspended because obviously we start the year with no students. And as we've gone through the year, we've had so few students that we haven't had enough pressure in the system to move forward on this. But this will be one of our priorities going into next year. Not just the community circles, which will create space in the room when we have 20 or more kids in the room, but also restorative practices. Our entire SCB team. Some members are being trained now, the rest will be trained during the summer to facilitate those restorative conversations. So if a student needs to take a moment out of the room, that they can be returned to the environment, to the community, and the class can have conversations about how to support one another when people are feeling dysregulated. So we're going to make that a universal. That will happen. Those community circles will happen twice a day. In addition to that, we've been doing community circles this year with the staff. On our Wellness Wednesdays, again, a district-led effort. And we also have a jam board, as one of the ladies spoke to, as a part of our staff meetings. All of our staff meetings begin with going through the jam board and looking at the wonderful things that people said about one another. It's really uplifting and encouraging for everyone involved. College readiness, obviously, is tied to our ELA goals, so it's still a work in progress. The way we approach this differently from just the academic pieces is the engagement with families. So that's one of our goals. Our weekly announcements kind of take on an interesting form. It's evolved over the course of the school year. At this point, it's a 5 to 10 minute video every Monday. And it is part announcements, part television program, part adventure. We highlight kids who have earned Eagle feathers throughout the week. We focus on our PBIS trait of the week. We have our Eagle traits, and we focus on whatever the trait is that week. We update students on the progress of trying to find our spirit stick, which has been stolen by our school's menace, the imposter. For those of you all familiar with the game Among Us, if not, talk to me later, I'll tell you all about it. He has stolen the spirit stick, and so kids are doing IXL to try to get it back. And Dr. Stewart is actually going to star in the next episode. She's going to help us get it back. Our Flight 180 is our video podcast that we sent out. We had our first episode. We're moving into our second episode this month, where we update parents in a video form. Parents are inundated with communications. I, as a parent of 2 students, inundated with communication, and I'm ashamed to say that sometimes I don't read the text messages. Sometimes I just delete them. I'm ashamed to say that, but it's true. And so making the podcast in video form, and it's called Flight 180 because it's 180 seconds long, 3 minutes, with a countdown timer, connects parents immediately and engages them and gets all the information to them very quickly so that if they need to go back and read the longer correspondence they can, which we have in the form of a monthly newsletter, and the Eagle Eye, which used to be the periodical, now it's a semester magazine. Sent out a parent survey this month. We'll send out another one at the end of first semester. We'll send another one at the end of the year, just to ascertain how parents are feeling, give them an opportunity to speak directly to us. And we also have our Beagles, which is our virtual awards. Beagles, get it? Eagles, get it? Right. And that's spring of 2021. And also we have an equity-focused PD. We decided not to go with a team this year. We felt like it needed to be a universal. So we were, again, I sat in this spot and I talked to you about our dual pandemic, the pandemic, the coronavirus, and the pandemic of racism. And so we as a staff decided that would be a universal. So we've been engaged in a book study. We're actually working through 6 books right now collectively, and we jigsaw together to talk about the different systems and patterns that we see. And we try to use what we've learned there to identify weaknesses in our own structures that are causing inequity to take place. And folks are highly engaged. Our next joint session is on PD Day on the 26th. Attendance is down, but we haven't had any days of OSS, so that's good. Best practice will continue though. The wellness team has been a wonderful addition. We've conducted just short of 50 home visits. I think we're either 48 or 49 home visits. And they haven't just been attendance, they've been related to social emotional support, a lot of home visits related to technology support, and we'll continue to do those. And then continued implementation and expansion of our RTI process. As I mentioned, there's a couple of components that we'll be adding with our competency-based learning and with our bilingual classroom that will be incorporated into those tiers. So the pictures, I have a 3rd grade classroom, 1st grade teacher who's doing a great job. She's got her writing process on the right and her reading logs on the left. Those are posted in the classroom. You have at the far right and the far left, you have our 1st graders or kindergartners rather, on the 100th day dressed as 100-year-olds. That's what they think a 100-year-old looks like. And then in the upper left corner, we have some of our students putting their eagle feathers in the box. And then of course, in the middle, we have our resurrection ferns that Dr. Kilbride talked about in the winter convocation as a reminder to us every day of how quickly we'll bounce back. This was literally hours after we put it in water. And since then, it's obviously expanded. That's what Marion's going to be next school year. Questions or comments?
So this is really important. The eagle feathers that get put up on the wall, did students get to be nominated last year, and will you do it again this year? And will you include RVA students?
Absolutely. So we have a couple tiers. We have our weekly eagle feathers that we draw, and we have our positive referrals, which are also featured, which is the next tier. And then we have our wall, which is like a lifetime achievement award. And so we're gonna expand that. We're not gonna do it this school year because obviously there have been kids out, but kids will be nominated. The 5th graders will be there, and we're also gonna post pictures of them. And I'm big on symbolism, so we're gonna make a big thing out of it. So that's also a coming practice I'm talking about today. So there's 3 levels to that. Yes, ma'am.
I just thought it was always neat. The older kids that came back would always run to that wall when they come in there.
Absolutely. Similar to the high school, in the hallways downstairs, the walls of fame for each department are lining the wall. So we're envisioning something like that where we have the kids' pictures up so they'll be able to come back for years and years and years and see themselves.
So a comment and then a question. The comment, I think it's Carthage, Missouri, that's got the highest percentage of neo learners.
Yes, sir.
And then the question, when you look at your ELA growth and then your math growth, ELA held pretty consistent, and then you saw some dips in math. So Valea, like, how do you reconcile? How do you hold your own in ELA or see some slight gains? And then with math, you see that there was pretty consistent dips. Like, is there something structurally, or what is your team talking about in those two areas?
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversation about that. And I think that just the reality just kind of boils down to opportunity costs. You have less time, so you're either going to do half as much of both, or you're going to do one or the other. And there was some just kind of the way it fell with 2/3 of that group that was tested being online through winter break, and then transitioning. It was a little bit easier to maintain that in ELA than it was in math. So we ended up with the focus on ELA and made good progress and even closed achievement gaps in some areas. But that's not to infer that there wasn't a sacrifice made, because you saw the drop in the other area. And so when you have 60% of the time that you had this time, well, I mean, not this time last year, but during the last school year, then unfortunately that's what we see. But what we feel good about is that our structures are healthy and robust. And when we have open road, then we'll be able to pick up speed very quickly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. As everybody has already said, this has been quite a year, and I never imagined that this would be the way my last year would turn out, but it has been an adventure, and I couldn't imagine being in it with a better group of people than I've had at Kratz. So I'm fortunate to be struggling through this year with them at my side. So as everyone said, we did not see the outcomes that we had hoped at this point. And as Mr. Ewing said, I do have a knack for cooking. And at least with cooking, you can make substitutions, and sometimes you can be creative about the ingredients that you have. But unfortunately, when it comes to learning, some of the essential ingredients, time being one of those and consistency being another, just have not been available to us this year. So unfortunately, the recipe didn't turn out quite the way we had hoped, as Mr. Ewing said. So our academic growth in both math and ELA leave much to be desired and are huge opportunities for us, but I'm confident that when we get back to normalcy next year, we'll be seeing some semblance of strong learning, and our kids are resilient and our teachers are dedicated. So there's no doubt in my mind that we'll get back on track next year. So if we look at our cohort growth, just as with some of the other schools, we suffered. And so again, lots of opportunity there, but not the result of lack of trying and commitment and dedication to our students and our families. So let's focus on the action plans that we have at Kratz. Like the other schools, IXL has been something that we have come to trust and to commit to. We were not one of the early adopters in the district with regard to IXL, but we're becoming believers, seeing the results that our kids are finding when they do focus on particular codes, as they're called. And so we'll continue doing that. We're going to take those codes that support the priority standards and really focus on those. One of the things that the classroom teachers are doing now is establishing classroom goals as well as individual goals with regard to those codes. And so that helps them give focus and also opportunity for celebration when our students master those skills. And IXL is also an incredible way to help individualize and differentiate for our students. And so specific skill sets can be assigned to students who need specific support and practice. We also want to continue with the reading conferences that our 4th and 5th grade teachers have taken on this year, and those have been, very helpful in working with students one-on-one and helping identify their particular needs and supporting them at the individual level. And so we are definitely committed to those, as the district is, and so we're looking forward to keeping a focus on those. Being a reader has been amazing for us at this point. Some of the fundamental skills that were not necessarily being taught to the level that they should are now the focus. And so that's really a great opportunity for our students to, build those foundational skills that are going to serve them well, throughout their learning. And we definitely have a commitment to equity. Our equity team is attending the district equity sessions and bringing that information back to our building. And we are all on a great learning journey with regard to equity, and have had lots of conversations and opportunities in professional development in our staff meetings and in our PLCs, and just in conversations that we have casually in the hallway. Lots of talk of equity. When we look at our social emotional growth indicators, like everyone else, we're enjoying low referrals this year, but that doesn't mean that there isn't tremendous need when it comes to social and emotional well-being. And so our action plan is pretty robust when it comes to that, and the areas that we've identified as areas of focus. Hopefully we'll continue to support our students and families as we get through the last leg of this pandemic, hopefully, and get us focused into next year and normalcy. So we're going to continue supporting our students that have been identified in our small groups and through Youth in Need, and our school counselors and art therapy counselor, who is an intern, have just done a tremendous job of supporting the kids in a variety of ways, and, as they have the families as well. Our counselor intern has done something that I think is very interesting and very innovative. One of the unfortunate things about RVA is that some of our students have had to go to other schools for instruction. And while they're getting amazing instruction at the other schools, they're kind of losing their connection to CRATs. And so that's an unintended consequence of that situation. But we have developed art hives, which allow the kids to have an open time for them to drop in, and they meet with other students from CRATs, and they create art together virtually. And through that creative process, issues may come up, they develop relationships, and they stay connected to our school. So we think that that's an amazing opportunity to just keep connected in this situation. Let's see, our counselors, as in the other buildings, are still getting into the classrooms, whether it's virtually or in person, and still developing the lessons that and delivering the lessons that are necessary to help our students cope with the situation at hand, and also to facilitate that relationship building that has really been so robust this year. The kids have had amazing opportunities to connect with one another in ways that they haven't before, and that is simply a function of there are only so many of them that they can connect with, and so that sometimes the most unlikely little pairings occur, and it's amazing to see, and it's been quite helpful in developing community in the classroom at this time. We're going to continue to monitor our students and our families and support them through the wellness team, as everyone else has mentioned. Those are something that I hope we move forward, because it is certainly something that, has benefited countless families. I know that at times it has been a bit controversial, but the intent is there to be a support and be positive, and it may just need a little tweaking here and there, but an amazing way to support our students and families in ways that we just didn't before this global pandemic came upon us. When we look at college and career readiness, we saw a significant dip, but we are focused on ways that we can support our students being college and career ready. We're going to collaborate with the other schools to develop that virtual career fair that has been mentioned. And I just thought that that was a brilliant idea from our counselors, knowing that we couldn't bring people in. They, again, can create little videos. They can zoom in and have live sessions with the students so that questions and answers can still occur. But what an amazing way that kids can choose the things that they want to visit and hear about, and something I'm looking forward to. I didn't know that Weiland had done a virtual curriculum night or reading night and learning night. So that's something that we are planning, and we're going to build upon a family fun night that we had previously this year, and that we'll just tweak it and have the various rooms, as Dr. Greenstein said, where they can learn about different reading skills or ways to support their children and enjoy reading together. We're going to continue to monitor the individual classroom data and support teachers. Just because we're in the middle of a pandemic doesn't mean we're still not looking at the data and still not asking questions and asking what can we do to help support you in meeting the needs of our children. And then during our announcements in the month of February, we focused on African-American folks who have contributed to our country and to our way of life. And so we thought that that was a fun way to introduce children to a variety of people. So we will continue to do that as well. With regard to attendance, as with everyone, we're struggling in some areas to engage our kids and to have them present online and on Fridays with the virtual classes. It's a struggle, but not something that we're going to ignore. So we'll continue to monitor and support attendance through the wellness team and the attendance team, doing home visits and finding ways to support our families and our students in coming to school. And we're going to continue to celebrate our hashtag awesome students. And so we're still doing that. We make a little video each week celebrating the kids who have been identified by their grade level to receive the award. We send that message out to the building, and then we send their certificate and a little prize home to their houses so that they can receive those at home. And we are going to monitor high-risk student concerns and develop those learning plans as needed. So as others have said, we're really just finding ways to support our students and our families and making sure that our kids are present and engaged and have everything that they need. Here we have some pictures just celebrating our Kratz kids. The 100th day of school project is always a kindergarten favorite. And so our teachers were committed to making sure that whether they were RVA students or hybrid students, that they got to celebrate the 100th day of school. We have examples of note-taking and hands-on projects in one of our second grade classrooms, doing some sharing of some writing in the lower left-hand corner. So, questions or comments?
I do have a question regarding the 4th and 5th grade individual reading conferences. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So our teachers receive professional development over the course of the year in the conferences. And so there's a structure that they use. They meet with the students, they work with them on setting individual goals. They talk about the reading, they understand, what does Miss Greco need? What do we need to do to support her? And then they set those little goals with them, they come back, they visit with them again later, and it's a good way to just have the one-on-one time and to identify their needs and to be able to support them individually.
And that's being done virtually and hybrid?
Yes.
Thank you.
They break out into breakout rooms when they do them virtually, and they're able to continue that in both settings.
So Tim, when you look at your attendance data, you know, the question before, do you see consistency between the fully virtual students and the students that are in person? Or do you see any difference in attendance between in-person and virtual kids?
The bigger struggle is with our kids in the virtual setting. Although, when you think of the hybrid students, the Fridays become the issue for our hybrid students. So even though they're hybrid, it's in the virtual setting where we're not getting the, you know, the commitment to attending. And so, you know, we have families who go see grandmother on that day consistently, and so they're just not online. And so unfortunately, they're missing out on some learning at that time. And then, you know, we have the same situation where it's, are you there? Are you participating? And I see your name there, but I see no face. The camera's off, and, you know, hello, Chris, are you Chris? And you just really don't get anything. And so the approach is then that they're really not in attendance. They've logged on, but they're not attending class. And so that's something that we take into account as well.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Singleton, the principal at Booter. There's an old adage that says, if you're going to have a hero, make it a teacher. And I just have to say that Booter teachers this year are my heroes, and also the family members that are acting as teachers in so many ways are just, any of the data that reflects is a reflection of their hard work and dedication. So academically, we have shown some growth, and we're excited about that in some areas. We tested 27 additional students in February than we did in September and October. And so I think that's important to note that there was a larger increase of students that were testing in January and February. So looking at our math data, we also have a little bit of a growth there. At one point we will celebrate. And then looking at our cohort growth, and again, from September and October to now, we had an increase of 16 students that took the test in math and an increase of 8 students who took the test in ELA. And when I look at those students who took the test, who took both September and October and January, February in math, 69% of those students made progress. And in ELA, 60% of the students made progress. So data tells multiple stories on multiple layers, and it is definitely something worth digging into just to see how much growth our students have made. And also, when you look at Evaluate and you look at IXL and you look at their formative assessments, those priority standards that you heard Dr. Stewart talk about that we are so focused on, we are seeing growth in those specific targeted areas where we are teaching, our students are learning, and that is exciting and worth celebrating on every level. Now, there's always room for improvement and always room for growth, and we're going to continue. Like you heard Mr. Ewing say, there's things that we do that are just best practices and things that will continue. And those are the things you've probably heard from every single principal here tonight. We're going to follow that data team process through the professional learning community model, which we also call PLCs. We're focusing on priority standards. We're focusing on module implementation, and of course our data process. We're still using the data workbook to track our students' scores, to figure out how they're gaining scores, how they're growing. We're talking in our PLCs. How do we know that they've learned what we've taught? What do we do if they're not getting it? And then what do we do if they've already got it? Because those are what we always want to address. And we definitely have some successes with that. I'm really excited. We have a virtual learning plan of a student who is now a virtual math student at Hake because he needed acceleration. So even in this current state that we're in, there's ways to accelerate, there's ways to remediate, there's ways to meet our students' needs. Like the other buildings, we're also utilizing IXL. This tool has been so effective in helping us track our students. And I dug in to some of the IXL goals and to evaluate to see that correlation. It's there, which is very exciting to see. Students are working on codes that correlate to those priority standards, and they're also working on their individual levels. So IXL has like two facets. One is the core content and also where a student is. So if they're behind in a skill, they can work on that also, which is just a great asset of the program. And you're going to hear much more about IXL next week when we're the school of the month. So we also conduct those student support team meetings to meet individual student needs. There's always room to meet every student's needs, and we want to always do that. And then we had several parent engagement meetings to share data with families and celebrate collaboration. So I have had a coffee with the principal meeting where we've talked about our joys and also shared our concerns, and I've shared data with our families. We've had a lunch meeting, and we've also had an evening meeting for just our kindergarten families, because I can't imagine having a kindergarten, you know, this year. It's got to be difficult. So we definitely celebrated and talked about that and shared with families, and they helped us plan our next event. So we're really excited about that also, which is going to be a virtual event where we are going to make a trail mix together and then read a story together and then do a math breakout room together. So we're excited about that. So looking at our social emotional growth indicators, of course, less referrals. And we have 99% of our students that have less than 2 referrals. So excited about that. So still supporting our students' social emotional growth. That wellness team that you've heard so much about meets weekly to discuss student and staff needs, problem solve, and celebrate. I cannot tell you enough how this wellness team comes together to meet our student and staff needs and what they plan and how they collaborate together. And before the high school went back into session, Officer Elliot Miller was part of that group. He was such an asset to our team, also really helping out with some individualized needs. The counselor meets with classes, small groups, and individuals. And of course, this is both in person and virtual. So meeting all of our students' needs, whether they're in a hybrid or whether they're part of RVA. Our social emotional interventionist, Coach Farrar, provides breaks, motivation, and check-ins. He is also our substitute extraordinaire when we need him to be. And he has been willing to jump into any class and do anything that we've asked, home visits, everything. So he's been such an asset to our school this year also. And then this actually happened on Tuesday. So we analyze upcoming Review 360 data to formulate those tiered supports. And Review 360 is the tool our district uses for teachers to kind of record their concerns with social, emotional, or behavior. So goal 2, looking at goal 2, which is our college or career readiness. And of course, this is not where we want it to be. And I think that you've heard that message tonight. So when I look at college or career readiness, of course, I look on the surface of how are we preparing our students for college and careers. And our district goal underneath that, it says we will engage students in rigorous and relevant learning. And so we know the pathway of getting our seniors in high school engaged in post-secondary opportunities that fit their needs starts in kindergarten. And of course, it starts even before kindergarten. So we have that school-wide focus on our new reading curriculum, which is relevant and it is rigorous, and it's so exciting for our staff, which I know you've heard about, but it's a very, very solid program, which is becoming a reader in K through 3, and we've been focusing on reading conferences in grades 4 and 5. We have also been adding daily phonemic lessons in kindergarten using a resource called Heggerty, because we know our students need additional lessons and just phonemic awareness so that they can be solid readers. We've also ensured access to books. So our librarian, Mrs. Phillips, has gotten very creative in how to get books in all of our students' hands. And when our 5th graders were still virtual, our 5th grade teacher, Miss Sweeney, made sure that she got books and had reading conferences with all of the students. And several students said, I don't have a lot of books at home right now, and the library is closed. And so she made a list of books. She did book talks, and we got books into every 5th grader's hands that didn't have books. And that was through a concentrated effort of our wellness team doing drop-offs. I participated in that, and a special shout out to Officer Elliot Miller and Officer Williams, who are both at the high school as St. Anne SROs. They delivered the rest of our books. So when we were running out of time, and it was that day before winter break, and we put an SOS to our wellness team that we still had some books, they came over like superheroes, and they did porch drop-offs, and we got parents saying, did an officer just drop off books? They were like, yes. And so it was a very exciting thing, and we were so thankful for them. We also had a Black History Month emphasis on scientists and inventors. And this was exciting too. So we learned so much. Like, I didn't know Mae Jemison, I didn't know all about her, and I was so excited to learn more. And we were learning along with our students. We had daily facts on the announcements, and it was just a really exciting time. And it culminated in a 1st through 5th grade virtual assembly with Mad Science. And so we just really had the emphasis on scientists and inventors this year. So our attendance, of course, has taken a dip, and but we definitely have a strategic plan for that. We have weekly attendance meetings, we prioritize, and we problem solve, and that takes place a lot of phone calls. So our wellness team splits up and we make lots of phone calls. We also do home visits, collaboration with families. We do book supply deliveries when we need to on porch drop-offs, so part of that home visit. And then, of course, we celebrate engagement and improvement. There was one family that we were really wanting to get at school, and the day that he finally got on the bus and everyone felt comfortable him coming to school, and we were all there like just be so excited because it just felt like such an excitement. So that's how we are improving our student attendance. And so the pictures that we have up here right now are the IXL picture, which we'll talk more about next week. We have the priority standards written there. And then as a student masters the specific standard, they get to sign their name, and they get an IXL postcard that goes home and gets mailed to their house. And our students get so excited about that. And I know several of our board members here today watch our Booter announcements on Facebook. Thank you for that. I read when you write comments and when you like it. It's so fun. When I leave IXL off of the announcements, the students stop me and say, "You didn't tell us what our IXL number was. Like, what are we at? How many questions?" And they answered over 100,000 questions just in the month of February. So proud of our Booter students. And again, we are Booter, all kids are our kids. We had a student, Olivia, who wanted to do a community service project, and I contacted Doug Bray, and he said the Ritenour Co-Care Food Pantry could really use peanut butter and jelly. And so we did a campaign called Spread the Love, and students brought in peanut butter and jelly, and my local church, Harmony, got involved too when they heard about it, and they shipped peanut butter and jelly. They dropped off peanut butter and jelly. So this was a really community collaborative effort, and we delivered that this week. So excited to help out there. And then the bulletin board at the top is in our main hallway, and it says "Your voice matters." And what you can't see is there's index cards with words on there. So when our staff first came back, we talked about in our equity team, and of course that's a huge focus at Booter, is what kind of voice do we want our students to have? And so they had words like victory, I will, valued, strong. And then when our 5th graders came back, we invited them to add an index card too. So it is a collaborative effort, and you can see the word strong, joy, beautiful, heard. And so just that focus on what do we want our students' voices to sound like, and making sure that they know that that matters. And then below you have a student who we are so proud of working on IXL, and you can see, so he's got his tablet open and he's working on IXL, and then he's also got paper in front of him because he's working out the problems, and we're just so proud of this student. So those are our questions, those are our pictures. Is there any questions? Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Proud to be able to share where Iveland is at this point in time. I think you're going to hear a lot of similarities from some other schools, but perhaps some differences. But I definitely want to start off saying that we've definitely had our challenges this year. We've definitely had some barriers that we faced this year, but there are so many things to be proud of that's going on, both at Iveland. I know the other principals would echo that as well. And so just want to say that I'm very proud of my staff and my families and my students for everything that they have done this year. So start off by showing some of our academic data here. And you can see, much like the other schools, we're in a very similar place at the beginning of the year. And I know like my other colleagues back there, oftentimes you want to just figure out why and dig in and get some information. So I'll just add a few little pieces to this. That first of all, I was able to congratulate 27 of my students on our video announcements in the morning that took the test both in October and February, that I was able to say that they grew more than 20% from the October to the February test. So that was something to be proud of. When we looked at our percent of students proficient and advanced, we definitely saw growth. And then when we looked at the standards that we focused on, our priority standards that you've heard some of our other colleagues talk about, when we focused on it, when we taught it, we saw growth in those areas, very much so similar to what we saw last year at this time in ELA. So some things to be proud of. Same kind of comments for math. Again, I was able to recognize 40 students on our video announcements who grew over 20%. An additional 39 students grew over 10%. So that's a good number of our students who were showing significant growth. Again, some significant growth in the number of students who were proficient and advanced between the two tests. And then looking at our priority standards, so standards we focused on when we taught it, they show that they made the improvement. So our cohort group, the good news for us is that when you look between their third grade year and their fifth grade years, there's definite progress there. So we celebrate that. So what are we going to do to make sure that that continues and that we see all the growth that we want to see in the coming years as well? So first of all, as always, it's really about supporting our teachers so that they can support our students and coaching them to even greater levels than what they already do. So as you've heard, being a reader is a pretty big focus in our building as well as it is in the other buildings. Dr. Nobile is our instructional coach, and I'm pretty sure he's on speed dial with the coaches at Collaborative Classrooms. And if we ever have a question, he's on the phone, he finds the answer and he brings it back. So we discuss things such as, if I have one student in a set that doesn't match everybody else, what do I do? How do I pace out a lesson? We problem solve together when there's something that's not going right. And I would say overall, our teachers are really learning some solid phonemic awareness instruction and phonics skills instruction. IXL, you've heard that this evening as well. Our teachers are assigning specific codes to students to be practicing on IXL so that the practice is purposeful and it's tied to the instruction that they're receiving throughout the day. We also, as you've heard, reading conferences, our fourth and fifth grade teachers, we're very pleased to have some focused professional development this year. They had 2 sessions with Barrett Gordon, as did the other fourth and fifth grade teachers. We talk about it in PLCs, about how their reading conferences are going. I've had some teachers who are brave and vulnerable who recorded themselves giving a reading conference and brought it back to the PLC to get some feedback from their colleagues. We've talked through how do you organize notes? How do you help make those notes visible for the students so they know what their goals are and can help track their progress. Another big spotlight for us this year has been simply spotlighting teacher practices. So our goal is to magnify and amplify the things that we see teachers doing that we want to continue in other classrooms. So through walkthroughs, we'll just simply leave teachers a note that says, when you did this, your students were able to do this, to show that what they do makes a difference. Also on Friday, we send out a memo with pictures of staff members in the midst of instruction and highlight what they did. That's the best practice that we would like to see continue in both of their classrooms and spread. Professional learning communities, we meet every single Wednesday. We never have enough time in professional learning communities. We are always running out of time. We do PD, we look at data, we set goals, we talk about instruction. We're talking about standards-based assessment. So there's a lot of discussion and dialogue and planning that goes on during our PLC time. And then again, just thinking through all these different instructional things that we've done this year because of the situation that we're in, just what are those good things that we want to continue on in the future when most of us will be back at some point in person. Again, we haven't had a whole lot of referrals to deal with this year, but I think it was Dr. Stryker who said that doesn't mean that kids aren't coming to us with social and emotional needs. So we definitely want to continue to support them as they are overcoming the issues that they're facing. One of our practices is that we're starting to implement restorative practices. We had a team of 5 teachers who went to the Restorative Practices Academy first semester, and they're meeting to plan PD for the rest of the staff. We're really trying to focus on connecting to what we already do through our PBIS structures and through what we've learned about trauma. We also have had a strong focus on equity, and truthfully, I could have put equity in our academic goals as well, but I chose to put it here because of some of the topics that we've talked about. Our PD committee has become our PD equity committee, and they plan one of our faculty meetings every single month. We've talked about things such as identity and power dynamics, intent versus impact. We purchase books for our classrooms that the characters in the books spotlight the different places that our students come from. So we've planned lessons that go along with those books that will be carried out inside of our classrooms. So trying to tie not just what we're learning to our staff, but connect it back to our students as well. You've heard a lot about our wellness teams this evening. And again, the wellness team at Iveland is pretty active, both through attendance, but also through just making sure that families have what they need. So we have our Steps for Success program where families are in the process of signing up to come pick up some new shoes, things like just making sure that the families have what they need to make sure that they can provide for their children. And then, of course, continuing to build our classroom communities through our daily classroom meetings. I've heard other principals talk, and it's very true that when you have a small class, they connect very well. They're out on the playground together. They're having lunch together. They form some pretty strong bonds with the small group that they're with, and we've kind of fostered that. You can see in terms of college and career readiness, again, we're in a very similar place to where we were at this time last year. And as I've said before in previous meetings, that for me, college and career readiness is making sure that every student has what they need in order to progress through school and be successful. So we continue with our pretty robust response to intervention protocols. We meet every Tuesday in student support team meetings and talk through what progress the students have made since we last met, what interventions do we have in place, what data do we have to say that they've either made progress or they haven't, and then make decisions based on what we see. Every Tuesday also, I'm meeting with our area coordinator to make sure that we're aligned with our special school district friends and that all of our students, whether they have IEPs or not, truthfully, we collaborate to make sure that we're meeting their needs. And then like you've heard with other buildings as well, we have our comprehensive school guidance curriculum very active. We're using the Steps for Success, or excuse me, the second steps, but also using Kelso's Choice, which is a problem-solving curriculum, and then using some of our trauma lessons as well to make sure students know about how the brain affects their emotions and how they can calm themselves down and zones of regulations like you've heard before. Like other schools, our attendance has dipped a little bit. I would say that when we look at our students who are most frequently absent, it is coming from virtual settings. So we definitely are aware of that and cognizant about that. We have had some student support teams and had the suggestion for some of our students to come back. We just had one of our 5th grade students come back last week. We hadn't seen her for a couple months. She has been there every day with smiles, and she personally emailed me to ask where to find her asynchronous work because she was so excited to have those connections again. So we're really glad that we have that flexibility when it's not working for students to have them come back into the building as well. I will compliment my office professionals who have really become IT experts. They really, as a part of our wellness team, are the first line of defense and helping our families when something's going wrong with their computers, they can't connect for a reason, trying to connect them with a hotspot, trying to swap out a Chromebook. They have really done a fantastic job of being responsive to families. And then we're just trying to, it really connects to my 3rd goal here, just trying to sit down and meet with families when we do notice that they're not attending regularly and try to figure out what is the barrier. Oftentimes families are pretty honest with us and they're saying what they're struggling with, and then we just try to give them suggestions. We've shared our screen and showed parents like where they can look on Google Classroom to find their students' work, how to access IXL, so they have access to their students' work as well to know what to be looking for. And then a big priority of ours has also been to engage families. So we've had our regular PTO meetings, and we tried to incorporate our curriculum nights as well. So we had our reading night in the fall where we had a Bitmoji classroom and teachers recorded themselves reading aloud different books. And on a Jamboard, they could talk about which read aloud was their favorite and vote for their favorite book. We've had a dance party, we've had bingo. We're getting ready to plan a science night. We're in the midst of planning, but our goal is to have a pickup where they can pick up some supplies. We can have some experiments going on in families. So we're trying to continue to support families and connect with them in terms of what they can do to help support their children as well. So a few pictures. My top left picture there is 2 of my EL students. And we know that in every classroom, it's really important to have students speaking, that they need to process their own thoughts and just practice using language. So Ms. Alexander's class, to problem solve that in a socially distanced world, has walkie-talkies for her kids to talk back and forth to each other, which they just love the walkie-talkies. The middle picture towards the top is our 4th grade RVA classroom. So trying to make sure that students are understanding some pretty complex topics with ordering fractions on number lines, mixed number fractions, and how that can be done in a virtual setting using the annotation tools. At the bottom left is Ms. Meyer's classroom, and every day her students who are home that day are welcome to Zoom into their class meeting. So they have the opportunity to connect with their friends still, to see their friends that they wouldn't normally see on a regular basis. And I have 5th grade lunch duty with them, so they have reported to me that it helps them get up, it helps them establish a little bit of a routine. And then Ms. Myers, of course, reminds them what their asynchronous work is so that they're a little bit more apt to participate in that. And then the bottom right picture is a classroom. It's one of my 1st grade classrooms. This was such a hard picture to capture, but it was so warm in my heart that I had to share that. This is Ms. Butler's classroom. It's one of our brand new 1st-year teachers. She has done a fantastic job of engaging her kids. At one point, I don't know that my picture captured it well, every single student had their hand raised in that classroom, and that's because of the protocols she uses, but also the scaffolds that she gives kids so that every single student had the capacity to participate as they're in that dialogue. So that's just a little bit about Evelyn for this evening. Do you have any questions?
One of the questions we've asked Amanda is, talking about next practices, so those things that are going to continue on and be a part of Evelyn beyond the pandemic. What's one of the things that you and your team are talking about that you wish to continue beyond this year?
Yeah, definitely. So IXL, we did participate in the pilot last year for math, but that was really contained to the 4th and 5th grade classrooms. And we found it very valuable throughout all the grade levels. Definitely Zoom meetings. I think we've had some great parent participation, or I should say it definitely improved from in-person when we offer Zoom offerings for families to join PTO meetings, to conference. Then just using tools like the annotation tool. Google Classroom has been a huge success. I was in a 4th grade classroom the other day, and they were doing some research. It was a group project for them to start as a whole class first before they had to go off and do it on their own. And the teacher had slides in Google Classroom for the students to complete. And she had the materials in Google Classroom, but she also had it as hard copy so the students could make the choice, which was the method that they would prefer, that most matched their learning style. Those are just, I would say, a few that kind of off the top of my head that I would say are definitely things that our teachers have talked about continuing on a regular basis.
How about the impact of your new assistant principal?
I'm sorry?
How about the impact of your new assistant principal?
So Ms. Larios Bell has been a fantastic addition to Evelyn. She definitely has developed some strong relationships with our students and our staff members as well. Definitely with some of our families that she's connected with, being that she's bilingual, she's had a great capacity to connect to some of our Spanish-speaking families. But I'm really proud of the ideas that she brings to us in regards to equity and restorative practices. Those are things that are second nature to her, and can bring those topics to our school to a great extent too.
So I do have a question, not necessarily just for you, but for all of the principals. So when we are going to do our home visits, what are some of the reasons that families are saying, what's the barrier that they're saying as to why they're not attending school, whether that's virtual or hybrid?
So I would say that it's really different for every family. For some families, it's just about struggling to keep routine and trying to accomplish all the things that a family has to do during the day. Go to the grocery store and manage childcare of younger students. And it's just oftentimes family dynamics that they're trying to sort through. Sometimes it's technology, and those are easier to problem solve. And really, I would say those are probably the two biggest that we come across.
I would add, I have a family in the RBA program. The mom works from home, a kindergartner and a third grader, and so she starts to work prior to the girls getting on at 9 o'clock, and so she has struggled with getting them into a routine and independency of kind of getting logged in because she can't leave her workspace, do that really changes. She has really had those discussions and lots of that.
Going along with that, we have a family who works out at the moment, so her children can't come to school because of health issues, but she's not there to supervise them, and so they're now logging on often as well.
Some students are having to go to multiple locations on multiple days to create some barriers. Sometimes between family members, grandparents, families have their own materials. I think some parents, some are going to struggle with engagement on the asynchronous days, and in order to keep families healthy, some parents are like, you have to choose this over this. And so, trying to work with families and create some positive learning environments even at home.
I'd say lack of routine and consistency is a huge issue. Our counselors did a home visit this morning, and it was probably about 9:45, and everybody was still sleeping when he got there, and they should have been, doing something. So, yeah, I think that's just a big struggle.
Thank you.
Okay, first of all, we want to thank our elementary administrators for putting in these processes and structures in place to ensure that our students are social distanced and learning. And of course, our teachers for all that they do as well. I have summarized the action steps that were in these presentations. I'm not going to read them all to you because you have already heard it, but just want to reiterate that they will continue to implement these action steps to help improve the academic achievement of our students and the attendance and really support the social emotional skills of our students. Our common trends involve collaborative structures to meet the needs of our students and families, strategies to engage students during this virtual learning environment, and continuing partnerships with colleges and universities to prepare our students for college or career. So that's the end of the presentation. Do we have any questions?
I would like to say on behalf of the board or myself, I'm speaking for everybody here, thank you so much. You and your staff. What you guys have been thrown into over the last year is amazing to me on the structures that you put into place, the changes that you've done, and just the constant change that you've had to do. It's not like you can make a change for everybody with that in place. You have to address individuals. So I just want to extend a huge thank you to you and to all of your staff, because it's not just the teachers either. It's the who was it that was you were talking at Ivor about how they've become tech people, your office professionals, now your tech support, and so everybody, it's just amazing, and especially even your the health. What is the word I'm looking for? The cafeteria.
Food service.
Food service people for all the work that they've done to make sure that even the virtual students are fed and the children on asynchronous days are fed and everything. So just huge thank you, and we're so thankful to have them.
I most definitely did on everything that Jennifer said, but I did want to add that one of the common themes that we're hearing throughout all of these presentations is that somebody also said it's important to look at each individual student. We're looking at each individual student, each individual thing. I appreciate that work. Please know that it's not gone unnoticed. And we thank you for that. I have just one curiosity question. Do you have any, in all the schools where parents are doing kids work? How much do you feel that?
Far less now than at the beginning. First started, we would have lots of like questionable situations. It's like, I don't think this came from you. And even on the initial round of evaluate testing, we were questioning whether those scores were valid and reliable because we didn't know who was actually taking the assessment in some cases. But now I think teachers have become much better at trying to set boundaries with parents and saying, I really need your son to do this without a lot of help. And so you'll see people, sometimes you can see people sitting off to the side and just making sure their kids are on camera and doing their work. On asynchronous days, it's kind of a whole nother ball of wax. So, you don't always know who's doing the work, but it's far better now than it was.
I think some parents and grandparents too have got a better sense of where their children are actually at current levels. And then when they hear like the virtual instruction, they're like, like I need help, I need to do this, or we need to work on this a little bit more. So there are some positive aspects that have come out of this that might not have ever come out of it before.
I totally agree. I just got a call today from a local school district that's asking about our reading children. And so, how did you do that? They're starting to do that. And like Dr. Cohort and I were talking about, there's some 2,700 students in the number of academy, so I think we have done a lot to make sure that we're on.
Like to follow on to Dr. Stewart, too, I'll stand up so everybody can hear. So, to follow up on that piece, the work of there can be a vision at the district level, but the day-to-day implementation and the structure and the nuts and bolts of making everything work falls on these people. When I think about the distribution of devices and the amount of leadership that Vallejo displayed back in August, when it was Fred, Harlan, and I working at such a high balcony level, and it was Vallejo stepping in and saying, hey, I've done this before. I did this at the high school, because he oversaw this entire one-to-one initiative here at the high school. It was Fred stepping back and me stepping back and just realizing the excellence that exists in this group of people. The other benefit, there's so many benefits that I see of this group, but another great benefit is I am not a structural person. So everybody's got their strengths, and structure is not what I lead with. This group really very much has structure as a strength. Maybe except for Vallejo, he's more of a visionary like me too, but you have to know where you are. So it's all strengths, and it's all good. But when I just think about the initial conversations that we were having, they were actually in this space right here, and there were some tough initial questions. To hear the questions that Jennifer Singleton and Lisa were asking, Tim and Nikki was with her child at that point. Happy to welcome her back. But there were tough questions, but they're absolutely the right questions that needed to be asked when we're talking about the scale at which the work we're doing. So Denise mentioned the Ritenour Virtual Academy. So there's 2,770 students that are in the Ritenour Virtual Academy, kindergarten to 8th grade. That's bigger than 8 St. Louis County school districts. Bigger than U-City, it's bigger than Jennings, bigger than Hancock, Afton, it's bigger than Bayless. And to scale that program up so quickly, again, the district can have the vision, but then it takes the principals who are such structural leaders talking through, okay, so how do we actually make that happen? And in a lot of regards, we don't have all of the answers. We don't have the the crossed Ts and the dotted Is, that's what happens at the building level. And I just appreciate so much of that, that work that's been done. Because on March 4th, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of when I was called into a meeting on a Sunday afternoon with Sam Page and Spring Schmidt. And there were 6 of us, 6 superintendents from the region saying, this virus is going to be an issue and this is going to impact schools. What do you want to do? And so then at that point, it was, we need to shut down schools in St. Louis County. And then very soon after that, the announcement was made. It impacted us on the 17th of March. And so while those high level decisions were being made, that immediately then caused these people to focus on kids, but also to a great extent to focus on their staff. And that's the one part, they're being, they're such child-focused leaders. What didn't come across is the amount of support and partnership that they've had to display with their staff this year. Because just as there is social emotional supports that they've stood up for students, they've also stood up so much social emotional support for their staff so that their staff members could be extremely successful as they're navigating the virus, as they're navigating all of the other issues that are coming along. So I just can't say thank you enough to this team. Just blessed to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work.
I don't think we've ever clapped after you guys' presentation before, but that was well deserved. You want to take a quick 5-minute break?
That's a good idea.
Why don't we take a quick 5-minute break, let everybody stretch their legs, use the restroom if needed, and we'll come back. Finish on with the next set. Our wrappers away.
Oh, they did. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Starting to get cold. Oh, this is why I brought my hot tea. I brought hot tea.
How are you? What's that? I did, actually. A little bit. Well, not when the technology was, I know what I was watching.
How are you, Kayla?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. Enjoying this good weather?
It's nice. Way better than the time I forgot my coat.
So are you virtual or are you?
I am in person.
You are what?
I'm in person.
In person. So how's this week going?
I've been loving it. If I'm honest. I really miss,
Seeing everybody?
yeah, it's just a building, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It was really weird at first. I was really quiet.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot better now. For sure.
Good.
But yeah, things are great. And I'm looking forward to Monday.
Okay, good.
That's when I'm going to step into.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So, yeah, I'm really excited to come to classrooms again.
Right. How's it going, Orlando?
It's going. How you doing?
I'm okay.
Good. You enjoying the start month?
Mm-hmm.
Good, how are you?
What?
Rough start to the meeting.
That's all right.
Here, Linda, how are you doing? I'm doing A-okay. I'm doing A-okay.
No, normally it doesn't. I think mostly it's just being up later.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You okay?
What are you saying? I know, and we always have my nervous spike coughs, everybody's like, oh. How'd you cough? Especially because I'm drinking water, my mask is off. Right. No. For the longest time, my husband would say COVID instead of COVID. So we joke like a nurse would cough. What?
Much needed little break.
Yeah. How was Patty doing?
She's holding in there.
I figured he was like, I would have heard you.
Patty got to go.
Right. That's it turns, but doesn't pop, you know what I'm saying? You gotta pop. Ooh, good job, girlfriend. Thank you.
That's something that's never going away. That's for sure. Okay, that was more than 5 minutes. We needed the break. Okay.
Okay. Walk around.
Grab a snack.
It's all good. Poor John.
Sure. Yeah. I can't remember when my mom got
Sorry.
her.
All right, we're ready. Let's go ahead and go on to 2.03, our starting learning plan. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Stewart.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lund. Well, board members, as I shared, we're about at the 1-year anniversary of realizing that the pandemic was going to have a significant impact on teaching and learning in not just the St. Louis region, but around the world. But as you heard tonight, there's been so many significant changes that we've stood up quickly with the leadership of leaders at the building level. And they've identified some practices that even when we do get on the other side of this pandemic, that will become a part of the work here in the Ritenour School District in the best interest of students and staff. Purpose of the presentation tonight is to talk a bit about a survey that was administered and then some of the corresponding data in the region. Purpose for the survey, didn't intend to do one. However, it had been some time since we had gotten the pulse of the community. And as I've shared, I've got a number of people that are speaking to me that are on either side of the issue in terms of what instruction looks like. Does it look like full virtual instruction? Does it look like the hybrid model, the current model? Also have a number that are pushing for 5 days in person. So the intent is always to get more perspective, a broader perspective on an issue, and just felt it important to get beyond those people that are speaking to me on a regular basis with their perspective, get a broader perspective and take the pulse of the community. Is the community supportive of our approach? Does the community believe that we're working in their best interest? And what is the staff perspective as well? So just as we surveyed the community, we also surveyed the staff around a lot of the same questions. So would like to share the outcome of that, of the results, and also share the fact that I believe that we have an opportunity. The work is always connected to the vision, which is to develop graduates who are productive citizens prepared to lead lives of personal integrity and fulfillment, while we're ensuring that every student is able to think critically, solve problems, and develop the knowledge and skills necessary for success in our diverse and global society. If anybody ever wonders where every student every day came from, it's directly from the mission. It's focusing on every student from our mission every single day in the district. We also stood up our equity statement with the input of a lot of members of the committee. The board approved it in August. The direct connection to our equity statement, you can see here in the slide, with specific focus on treating everyone with dignity and respect by valuing perspectives and cultural diversity, making sure that we're hearing all voices, just not that small number of voices that are engaging on a regular basis. So a bit about the survey. So the survey was pushed out between the 18th of February and the 22nd. This is another next practice that might change. Normally we put a survey out for a week and a half, perhaps 2 weeks under normal conditions. During this time of the pandemic, we've seen that 3 or 4 days is sufficient to get a sample size that's representative and it's statistically significant. So in 4 days, we were able to get 729 responses through the Community Services Department under Doug Gray's leadership. You can see the breakdown of the English speaking family responses and Spanish speaking family responses. All of the responses were spread quite evenly across schools, across grade levels. There were not clusters present. On the 22nd, same survey was pushed out to staff, and you can see the response rate, a total of 328 total responses, with 268 of those responses being teachers. Again, sample size large enough that you can generalize from the results. Now some of the overall findings. So the overall findings, staff and families are overall positive about the impact of learning, the hybrid in-person learning and being back in school buildings. Both groups, both families in the community and staff, indicated that the asynchronous learning, which is where students are learning virtually, not with a live teacher, where students are working on their own, is not an effective strategy to move the learning of students. A clear majority of both staff and families said that less than 3 hours a day is being devoted to asynchronous work, but beyond just the bean count of the number of hours, it's also the quality of work and the completion of work, which is not occurring during asynchronous time. The majority feel like students are making some academic progress. We know that academic progress is absolutely critical, but we also know this year we have to provide a level of social emotional support for students as well as for staff. The two digital platforms that we're utilizing, Google Classroom as well as Seesaw at the elementary level, the early elementary level, there's a level of support for both of those platforms. And then the final question was, in terms of our approach, we are phase 2 at kindergarten through 12th grade. We're phase 1 at the School for Early Childhood with a reduced class size. What's the level of support amongst staff and amongst the community in terms of our phase and what the learning looks like? The options were 2 days in person with 2 asynchronous days and a full virtual day on Friday. That's the current schedule, K to 12. 4 days with a full virtual day on Friday. That is what we're moving to on Monday at Ritenour High School. That was based on an opportunity that was identified due to low level of in-person attendance in the hybrid model. Classes, which may be 15, 16, 17 in the hybrid model, were divided into an A cohort and a B cohort. And consistently at Ritenour High School, what was being recognized, while there may be 7 or 8 students that were targeted to be in person on that day, consistently 1, 2, or 3 students would be in person on that day. It's just very low levels of in-person attendance. So the opportunity was identified. We could combine both of those cohorts into one full 4-day class, and we could still meet the social distancing requirements that we've had in place all year and get kids more in person while eliminating that asynchronous time. And then the last option was 5 days of full in person, which is phase 1 in the return to learning model. So I'll go through the results. It's broken out into families and into staff. And when these surveys are created, the language that's used is very purposeful. And so you'll see 2 terms that are used interchangeably. So when we're talking about families, we're talking about the level of excitement. When we're talking about staff, we're talking about the level of effectiveness. And so those 2 terms can be used interchangeably, and it generates valid results. So when it comes to families, how would you describe your child's feelings about hybrid in-person learning? Won't just read everything to you, but a little less than a fifth say my child is not excited at all about the hybrid in-person learning, while about 82% of families say that yes, there's some level of excitement. We heard tonight from the principals, it kind of runs the gamut. There are some students that are absolutely thrilled about being back in person, other students and families that feel the safety of full virtual is their best option. When it comes to staff members across the district, those 328 respondents, how do you rate the effectiveness of our hybrid in-person learning in Ritenour? You can see the very effective and effective is about 55% of the group, so a slim majority believe that the hybrid in-person is effective. When it comes to asynchronous learning, one of the key takeaways is pretty glaring. Question to families, how would you describe your child's feelings about asynchronous time, which is right now 2 days a week for students? Less than, or right at 11% of families report that this is something the students look forward to. An overwhelming majority, 88%, report not excited at all or somewhat excited. When it comes to staff, the effectiveness of asynchronous learning, a little bit more than a third of staff members surveyed responded that asynchronous learning is not effective at all, while nearly a half of staff report that it's only somewhat effective. Then, as a measure of time, how much time do you estimate your child spends on schoolwork each day during asynchronous learning? Families, about 2/3 of families report that a student spends less than 3 hours a day during asynchronous time. That number jumps up pretty significantly when the question was asked of staff. It was nearly 90% of staff members who report that students are spending less than 3 hours of time on asynchronous work. The question around academic progress, do you feel your child is making academic progress through in-person learning? Question to staff, very similar. Do you see progress being made? Roughly 2/3 of families say, yes, my child is making academic progress through the hybrid in-person learning. That number jumps up to about 3/4 of staff. So while some progress is being made, we know that it's about academic gains, but it's also about social emotional support. We see that students are losing ground just a bit this year in the lack of gains that we're seeing over time. This is despite the best effort of teachers, support staff, members of the wellness team, administrators that really are doing great work every day on behalf of kids. The question around learning platforms is in place as well. Google Classroom and Seesaw, you can see a high level of satisfaction amongst families and a high level of satisfaction amongst staff as well. There's a couple of other learning platforms that are out there, such as Canvas, that a number of districts have stood up or in the process of standing up. If we make decisions based on data, there is a high level of support at this point for the current platforms that we're using. And then the final question was around in-person learning options. Choose the option below that best describes your feelings. Again, being engaged on a daily basis by a relatively small number of people on both sides of the both perspectives, wanting to get a broader community and a broader staff perspective. Do you think Ritenour students should continue with the current model of hybrid in-person learning? Do you think that Ritenour students should attend school in person 4 days per week with minimal social distancing for students? Friday would remain an all virtual day to allow for deep cleaning of buildings. Minimal social distancing is defined. We would not be able to guarantee 6 feet of social distancing throughout the buildings because it would be collapsing the two cohorts into one. So the class sizes would increase. Social distancing would be implemented to the greatest extent possible, but it would not be at the same levels that it's in now. And then with 5 days, it would be similar class size. It would be the elimination of the virtual day. When students are in person and class sizes are at this level, it's possible that an entire class, if there is a positive student or a positive staff member in a classroom, based on the guidance of St. Louis County, it's possible that an entire classroom would need to be quarantined based on guidance from the County Department of Health. So the feedback from these questions. So family responses, 18.5% or less than a fifth of families reported that, yes, I would like my children to continue with hybrid in-person learning 2 days per week. The highest percentage, 42%, reported prefer that my children attend in-person 4 days per week with minimal social distancing. And then just shy of 40% of families report being interested in 5 days per week of in-person instruction. When we get down to the staff metrics are quite different from where the families and the community work. 2/3 of Ritenour staff that responded reported thinking that Ritenour should continue with the current model, which is 2 days in person, 2 days of asynchronous, and 1 day of full virtual. About a quarter, 26% to be exact, think that Ritenour students should attend 4 days in person. And then just shy of 8% believe that students should be back in person 5 days a week. I took this information to the Phase 2 committee this past Monday, and we had a good conversation. Asked the Phase 2 committee similar questions. There was good dialogue. The Phase 2 committee has been somewhat split over the course of the year. We put norms in place so that people can be in different places, and it's not a debate with one another, but rather it's dialogue, and it's bringing data to the table. A question was asked of the Phase 2 committee. The idea, the similar question to this: do you believe that we should pursue higher levels of in-person instruction on the 4-day or 5-day, or do you believe that we should continue where we are currently? The Phase 2 committee continued to be split, where there were a number of parents and staff members who were advocating for higher levels of in-person instruction. There were also a number of people on the committee also that were questioning safety and were continuing to advocate for remaining right where we are. So we looked at some additional data in surrounding districts, and this was a request that was made of me to take a look at data from surrounding districts that had 4 or 5 days in person, and I went to districts that had 5 days in person. I took a look at the COVID dashboards in Francis Howell and in Hancock Place, along with Fort Zumwalt and Webster Groves. So in those districts that have been either in person 5 days now or have been in person 5 days for some time, the number of positive students and staff members in those districts, based on scale, because some of the districts are bigger, some are smaller, are pretty consistent to where the Ritenour COVID dashboard is at this point in terms of the number of positive staff and positive students. So I'm thrilled to report right now that we don't have, up until today, we did not have a single positive student in the district. We had one staff member that was positive across the district over the course of this last week. This data can indicate a lot of things. We know that the virus can be spread, but we're not seeing the virus spread to any high degree in schools. The virus is certainly something we need to continue to respect. We need to continue to keep people safe. We need to continue to keep quarantine structures in place so that if there is a positive student or a positive staff member, we need to be able to implement quarantines to stop the spread. But I do believe, based on the current data, based on the feedback from the survey, that it is time to consider higher levels of in-person instruction for Ritenour students. We see the data around asynchronous learning, that it's not something that the community nor the staff feel is impactful. And so the idea of eliminating asynchronous learning time for students, we see as a benefit for overall student learning. So I say that we need to pursue higher levels of in-person learning, knowing that the staff data is quite clear. The staff, based on the survey, and some staff members in the Phase 2 committee meeting also are speaking quite vociferously against the idea of higher levels of in-person instruction. We've always worked to be as safe as we possibly could. We always have to learn from incidents that have occurred of how we can be even better. We do have PPE in place. We do have the air filters in every space now, along with the ionizing systems that are attached to all of the air handlers in our schools. So I wanted to get this data in front of the board tonight, along with the data from our Spanish-speaking families, which you can see on the screen now. We had a little more than 100 responses from our Spanish-speaking families. It was much closer in terms of divided between 2 days, 4 days, and 5 days. The greatest percentage of Spanish-speaking families that responded reported a desire for 5 days of in-person. The next 1/3 were interested in 4 days, with the lowest percentage, even though it's pretty close, were requesting that we would continue to go on with the current model that we have. Wanted to get this data in front of you and can answer any questions that you might have. And just wanted to reinforce the fact that I'm quite surprised by these survey results. It was put out, and I didn't think that it was going to be that overwhelmingly in favor of more in-person learning at the community level, and that's what caused me to be surprised.
I would like to say something about all this. First of all, thank you for doing the survey. There's concern on my part that the community wasn't being heard because of our committee meetings. It's apparent when I was in the district with my children, I probably could not get here every other week at 3 o'clock to be a part of a committee that's meeting. So I thought they were very underrepresented. And so I really appreciate you getting the survey out. I think that's really good. I think we all need to remember that our community is our customer. And when a business, as an analogy, if a business is in business and doesn't take the customer's desires in consideration, they're not going to last very long. And so they're our customers. Our families, we just have to listen to them. One thing that I think we've learned and had to do this past year, and we just heard it tonight, is to be more directly involved with the families. As you said earlier, making that community. And the students' education, because they are more involved because they're at home doing their education. So I think we took the right step this summer when we had the survey, and the parents, we got a great thing. But, in spite of the fact that we heard what they wanted, we went the opposite of what they asked. But I think that was the right step because it was so early in the virus stage. We had to put safety first at that time. But now things are changed and things are different. The good things that are changed are that the cases are down, the vaccines are available. People are more aware about just cleanliness, washing your hands, not, wearing masks up, from spreading germs and all that. So it's becoming part of a routine now. The bad part is, though, the emotional aspect of it. The kids are not getting what they need. They need not even just the kids, the families, the adults. It's led to depression, suicide rates are up, stress on a family. And of course, the number one thing we're learning, as we heard again tonight, that it's just not working. Asynchronous learning isn't working as well as in school. So everything in life is a risk. We have to weigh risk on a daily basis for all of us. The survey, our customers have weighed their risk, and they're really telling us they want the kids back in school. And I really do believe that that's the right decision. So thank you for doing that. Thank you very much.
One thing I'd like to say is that thank you for doing the survey. I'm glad that we did that, but I think another thing is thank you for always letting the data kind of drive how you were, because in the beginning, it was not good. I think if we would have tried to come back in the beginning, we would have had more kids out than in anyway. So that being able to keep that consistency for the students was better. But now that, like, the data, we're seeing that the numbers have gone down extremely. People are able to get the vaccine. So I'm just thankful that you use the data to help drive the decision.
Thank you. I think that we know how emotional and how connected clearly everybody is to this. And so I think it's always important to try to make a subjective decision as objective as possible. And I think that's where you let the data try to drive decision making. Did not have a plan to go back to more in-person learning at K-8 until we got the survey results, and just seeing, just how overwhelming the survey results are. We took the opportunity at the high school, because of the low levels of in-person attendance, we could combine both cohorts and we could keep lower class sizes. The class sizes moving to higher levels of in-person at K-8 would be larger than what they would be at the high school, and the level of social distancing that we have in place couldn't be guaranteed at K-8 to the same extent that it would be at the high school. But it would be a good faith effort to incorporate as much as possible. Positivity rate is a measure that we monitor quite closely. It was 4.3% in St. Louis County yesterday. It's up to 4.9% today. It was 5.5% on Monday. And then the transmission rate is another measure that we look at closely using an R0 value. So if the transmission rate is above 1.0, the spread, the rate of transmission is increasing. If it's below 1.0, then the spread is declining. So as of the report on Monday, it was at 0.96, which indicates a slight decline. So this idea of looking to pursue more in-person instruction, I do believe it's the right thing instructionally, but just want everyone to know that there are strong feelings on both sides of this in the community. There's very strong feelings about this among staff as well. And then the idea of pursuing this, we know that we're going to have to support staff to the greatest extent possible so they can be their best selves and do the work with students.
I think also too, showing what Dr. Dabb shows that it can be done. And I think that our staff needs to realize that.
So Chris, at this time, what would be a time frame that we could work on or go by and say, we're gonna have
Yeah. So we want to have some more conversations. Don't have a clear timeline yet at this point that we could put out. It's going to be some more conversations that we want to have quite quickly before we would put any of that out.
I did have a question. When we talk about that, one of the challenges has been that people who are signed up for hybrid in person are not attending. That's the rationale as to why we would go back 4 days. What are the strategies that we're talking about to encourage attendance? Is it just because we're going to 4 days that we think they're now going to start coming?
Yeah, no, I think it comes back to the idea of the work of the wellness teams and the attendance teams. I think there are a number of reasons for why attendance is not that high. And so I don't think we can share an overall blanket of what would work, but rather, do we know our kids? Do we know our families at the buildings? And do we know what levers we can pull to improve attendance?
The other thing I do want to put in the air, yes, the vaccine is available. There are disparities in how the vaccine is being distributed, as well as the areas in which how it's being distributed. Right. So it's available, but there's still some disparities. So I don't want it to seem like that. Yeah, it's out there, so everybody just needs to go take it. That's not the case. Right.
Everybody still needs to know.
Yeah, everybody still needs to practice safety procedures. Right. Yeah, which we're already doing.
Don't send your kids to school if they do not pass the checks. That is how you keep everybody safe. Any other questions?
Could you elaborate a little bit on the disparity that I just want to make sure that I know what's going on?
So as far as when you look at the areas and where that we had the higher outbreaks or the higher rates of COVID, those are not the areas where the vaccine has been easily accessible, or if they have lower volumes or lower amounts of vaccines being distributed in those areas.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you.
on the news yesterday in Crawford County, Missouri. They sent the news crew down there to interview people that are getting shot. And except for one person that is from Cuba, the rest of them from St. Louis County, Charleston. Yeah, that's an hour and a half. That's an hour and a half drive to get down there. And most everybody down there that day was from the St. Louis area.
But you have to get a code to go there. It's not like you just go down there and get it.
Oh, no, you had to
Yeah, you have
register and all that other stuff, but that day, there's only one person from Cuba there. And that's that disparity again.
Yeah, so I'm happy to share that. I got a phone call and I had a conversation today with Education Plus. And there's a new partnership that's forming with Spring Schmidt and the County Department of Health and 5 school districts. And we're one of them that are going to help to design the rollout of when Tier 3 is here. So March 15th will be the opening of Tier 3, which is the tier that educators are a part of. There's no guarantee that there's going to be enough vaccine at that point for that to be a rapid deployment. But we're one of 5 districts that's going to, we'll send a representative to be a part of a planning team to partner with the St. Louis County Department of Health to design some mass vaccination events for educators. So it won't be a situation, as Dr. Thomas had brought up, where we have 432 teachers, 870 total staff members that work here in this district. And if we have 870 people that are having to go to Cuba, Missouri, or Perryville, Missouri, or Butler County, that's going to put a significant strain on the organization and HR. So instead, the hope is that organizing mass vaccination events for educators is something that, it's good that we are going to have a voice at the table. We'll be able to try to impact the idea of not just as quickly as possible, but having clear criteria for when educators in St. Louis County are available. There's so many educators that if school districts were getting at it in different fashions, if we prioritized early childhood educators first, whereas if another school district prioritized social studies teachers at the high school level, then people assume that's the level of value that you place in them. So it's critical, to have a consistent prioritized process across the county. We'll have a hand in helping shape that. Thank you all.
The next item on our agenda today is 2.04, the Board of Education self-evaluation discussion. I will get it started, but look for everybody to kind of give their feedback and as we move through the different questions.
I just want to note on my question 60 and 66, that's not what I have put, because even my answers don't match that. And it exceeds expectations for both of those. So I don't know how to go in and make that change at some point. It's just the wrong one was on there.
Oh, okay.
It happened twice. Everything else was good.
Can you say those numbers again, please?
60 and 66.
Doug? Could you please make, you don't have to do it right now, an adjustment to question number 60 and 66 for Stacy? They should not be, does not mean, they should be, Stacy.
Performance fully meets expectations for both of those. One's the calendar. No, I was just kind of like, reading through that going.
I don't approve the calendar.
So number 60 and number 66. Yeah.
Okay. If any, as we go through, if anybody recognizes any discrepancy, please let me know. Oh, so there's question and then comment.
But they're biting. Okay, so the first one that I wanted to just bring up was number 4. The board ensures the district practices are aligned with governing policies and are reviewed on an as-needed basis. Sorry.
So which one are you looking at?
Question number 4 ensures that district practices are aligned with governing policies and are reviewed on an as-needed basis. So I just made a comment on, I'll just talk about my own comment on there. I know that when items are presented to us, it's tied back to, that is needed to be tied back to a policy. It usually is, but I believe it would be helpful if we would have a little bit more review of policies ourselves. I don't know what that would look like, but I think it would be a little bit, I think it would be helpful.
So when you say that, Jennifer, do you mean it as in like, when the policies are presented to us, we research those older policies that are referenced?
So kind of like when something is brought to us and we reference a policy that it is associated to, just making sure that we review that policy, that we understand it, that it's still active in the way it is, you know, like we has changes been happened to it? Do we need to look at it to make it more up to date? Any other questions or comments on that one?
I think we just let Chris do it. We just depend on him. You know, I don't think we actually look at stuff and say, is this really aligned? I'm not saying Chris is wrong. I'm just saying, I don't think as a board, we actually do this.
That's why I think we should become a little bit more familiar with it.
So I guess the other question I will have too is, like, when the policies are presented to us, they come as, when Dr. Cobar brings them to us, he brings them as, okay, well, this came down from
MSBA or law.
So do we get that information anywhere, like those changes, should that be coming to us, or does it always go directly?
Yeah, so when changes come, they generally get spurred through MSBA. They go right to Michelle. And then Michelle and I get the changes, then we bring them to the policy committee, or the edit that we're bringing to discuss tonight, we brought it to the support staff committee, because the policy committee has a support staff member. This policy directly impacts all support staff, so just thought it made more sense to bring it to the support staff committee to get more voices around it. And really with the MSBA policy updates, you get them sporadically throughout the year. It's usually, is it 3 or 4, Michelle?
Yeah, it's supposed to be 2 or 3, but it's been several. This year's actually the first time it's slowed down, but yeah, it's been 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So generally it comes right to Michelle. Then if it's something that we already have an existing policy, like a lot of districts will just turn their policy service entirely over to MSBA. For many years, we didn't do that with Max Wolfram. Max maintained our policies and kept everything up to date. So we're now transitioning where we haven't turned policies over to MSBA because there's a significant additional cost to do that.
Yeah.
But we do have the policy service where they, funnel the updates to us. If we didn't do that, that would mean we would have to have an attorney or me combing like legal updates, statutory changes, combing legislation for the changes. So the MSBA service really is helpful.
So most all of these changes are driven by state legislators and laws and things like that. It's not just an up and coming trend, it's a legal thing.
Yeah, either statutory change or based on legal findings, so a lawsuit gets settled, then that's where that comes from. If the board is interested in what it looks like from MSBA, the next time we get one, I can have Michelle, forward it to you so you can see what it looks like in a Friday.
Now, I'm just curious where they came from.
Oh,
MSBA sends them, but
it's Kelly, is it Kelly Hopkins?
yeah, she's over there for me. So we could probably
But the question is, are they aligned? Are our practices aligned with the policy? I don't think we just take it for granted that you bring to us that, yeah, our policies,
And
our
Michelle-
practices are aligned to whatever policy.
And Michelle pointed out to me that it does state that it's the governing policy. So how we govern our board.
Yeah, I think the policies align with the governing process. There is opportunity to reference, find out more about the old policy on our end. I don't have to do that. Right, yeah.
Okay. Going on to question number 6, the board actively participates in community events to build positive partnerships.
I put down that this could be, the board as a whole, we don't really do anything as a board, represent community. Individually, we do. And people know us as, oh, that person's a board member, but we as a board don't necessarily do a whole lot in community.
Yeah, I would say especially this last year, we've been, had a little bit of a snafu there, but, at the, no, we don't do enough, but I will say, at the Black and Orange Day, we always have a table there where everybody can kind of volunteer their time if they want to come out. You're speaking like all of us together.
Yeah, but to me, that's not community, that's school stuff. We're just like we have the kindergarten thing, we have a board, board table for that. But community stuff, we don't necessarily have anything that the board goes to and represent. We all do different things in the community, and we get a lot of response from the things that we go to, I think.
Yeah.
But as a board, no. A lot of these questions as I was doing them, maybe we need to change them, or, that's why a lot of them I put need improvement. If we want to actually do what the question is, we either need to improve it or else we need to change the question.
I see how you were reading it. I read it as, each of us individually go out and represent the school district, and the things that we do. Not necessarily all
Then it should read then the board members.
Yeah, individual members are participating, because if I go to something, I don't represent the board. I can't say, hey, the board is saying da da da. No, I'm there as Greco. And I'm on the board and people can come tell me what they think, but I can't say. I know one time we had a board member, in fact, I called him out. Because he did it one time, I said, okay, third strike, you're out, buddy. He would go to these meetings and he would say, well, I'm on the board and we think blah, blah, blah. No, you can't do that. Right now, you can't do that. No. So we either need to change it or, change the wording.
Yeah, because also it gets to be an issue when you have all of us meeting at the same time. And that means, are we having a meeting? So it's almost like it needs to read when individual board members are becoming active in their own communities. And even, crossing communities, if I'm from Overland, going over to Breckenridge Hills or to St. John's and seeing the activities that are going on over there too.
Do board members individually, are they active in the community?
I do think as a board, or as, how you want to do it or look at it, I think our board does need to be more connected. Maybe we go visit the different cities, council meetings, and just let them know that we're here. And so many times a year, we're gonna come there and I don't know, maybe do something like our school of the months do during their open discussion. And say, we'd like to have 5 minutes of your time to tell you what's going on and doing. And, in your community, Breckenridge Hills, Wilson Terrace, Overland, St. John's, and Ann. I think we need to reach out to them as a board or as 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 or whatever you want to say. And let them know that we're around. Maybe if we have more of a dialogue with them, that things like something with Overland might not have happened.
So I will say that we've been saying that for years. And so if somebody would like to put something in place. I'm sorry?
I think I'd like to say our board members individually actively participate in our leaders leader. If we want to leave it the same, then we've got to change our.
I'm sorry, I was referring to the comment of attending.
Yeah.
The different cities and stuff like that. So we've been saying that for a couple of years, that we need to be more involved and kind of know more about what's going on in different cities. And Overland is a prime example.
Well, I will say we used to hold a dinner a couple times and invited the different, and one time it was fine. Still, not everybody came. Another time we didn't get enough responses. So,
Okay.
Try, but
I mean, would it be okay, like, if all of us went to, like, regular sponsored events, like the elementary school, or would that be considered?
So you can't have a majority of the board together at one point. So if it's 4 people or more, somebody can question it.
But you referenced Ritenour events. So like if there's a play or something going on and we all show up, we really shouldn't all sit together. So like you'll see us and you'll like if they announce that the board is here, you'll see us all kind of pop up in different areas. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But that's a written event, not necessarily a meeting.
So when I read this question, I was thinking about it, same what you was talking about with the Black and Orange, different things within the district. So when the question was actually put together, was it talking about community outside of Readiness? Since that's something that no, something I immediately thought about was the Ritenour community, not necessarily. How can I say it? The stuff that the school did, the school community versus the community outside.
I think it's written outside of the district.
And so I comprehend it as the community, and Ritenour is a part of the community.
Right.
And so that's how I interpret it. So I think we'll get it more clarified and better worded, and we'll say the board members actively participate individually participate actively.
The board members individually participate.
Okay. In community events. What do we want to say? Because I prefer to have it. I feel Ritenour is a part of the community. So how do we say it so it includes everything?
I think if you're trying to say that you want it, that we're visible in the community outside of Ritenour, I think you have to think outside of Ritenour. I think that was the goal of the question, is that people outside of Ritenour know us and communicate with us.
When Woodson
Inside
Terrace,
Ritenour, no.
when Woodson Terrace and Woodson Terrace Days at their park and the Lions Club had their thing there, Norman Myers, St. Anne had their thing at St. Anne. I saw it as us You know, that's all our community, all those communities, cities are our community, that we left the Ritenour grounds and went out there.
That's what I.
And I wore my shirt or whatever that said, I am a Ritenour school board member. I didn't have a table that said, come to me and talk to me, but I was there with my neighbors. I was there with the people there, and they saw that I was part of their community. They could read on my shirt, my orange shirt, that I'm a school board member. And if they wanted to approach me, I am here. I'm participating in what I see as my community. Okay, that's what I saw. That's how I perceive this question. And that's why I said, I believe each person here, all the way around this table, does that in their own way, at their own place. Ruth goes to things, say, over that way, and I go to things over that way. And I think we cover this whole 9-city community very well on different things, sports, church, fairs, festivals, all that stuff. I think we're very good at not overlapping. We don't have all the kids playing softball or baseball, or basketball. Our interests are so diverse. Our kids are different ages. We are different ages where we look at things differently. And I think that's one of the strengths of this board right now.
I guess the question goes back to when we get involved, as you just said, do we go as a board representative? Or am I there as a parent? Am I there as a, just somebody that's involved? Or am I actively involved as a board member when I go to these?
No matter what you do, you could take your orange shirt off and put a purple shirt on, say you're from Parkway North. But in our community, you're still an elected official to Ritenour. Okay? And when you don't go out and represent the board, you go out and represent Orlando Lewis too. That is on the Board of Education. I go out there and I have people that say, hey, I didn't know you were still on the board. I'm glad you're still on the board. I hate you're still on the board. Whatever it is, you just start a conversation because you are their representative. You don't have to say, I represent the school board. I am on the school board. I represent you people that I'm here with. And that gives them an opportunity to see you. That gives you an opportunity to see what's going on in our community. And that gives you a chance to bring that back to a discussion like this, saying, hey, I was at, and we started this discussion about. I want to bring that back to the board. It might have some merit. That's what I see it as. You might be setting yourself up for a discussion, an argument. I don't like what Ritenour's doing thing, but if you don't know the good, the bad, the ugly, you can't come back and say, this is what's wrong.
Okay. So moving on to question number 8, the board reviews input from students, staff, parents, and the community.
Which one are we on, 8?
Yep.
Okay.
Anybody want to make any comments? I like surveys. That's what I like.
I put down that it's definitely an area we can improve upon because you all hear things, but we don't necessarily discuss them as a board. We might talk to 1 or 2 people, we may talk to somebody, might talk to Chris about it or someone of his staff, but we don't necessarily talk about it as a board.
So would that be more done at board member comments?
Well, I think it depends on what it is. Like if, it
Obviously,
really
if
kind
it's
of-
an individual, then
Yeah.
it has to be closed, but if it's just, concerns or stuff, do we bring it up during board member comments? Do we
No,
reach out and talk to individual board members?
Yeah, no, I think, my take on that is, I feel like, I hear from you. If there are questions or concerns that you hear from the community, then like my goal as a superintendent, if I hear one thing from one of you, the rest of the board needs to know about it too. So I don't want, one board member or two board members to have information that the rest of you don't. So I try to, if I hear something from you, if one of you bring a concern to me, I just don't want the rest of you to be hearing about it from somebody else. So I try to put it in an update or a Friday memo. So I think if it raises to the level that the whole board needs to know, and I haven't already let you know, that board member comments would be appropriate. But if it's personnel or that kind of stuff too, you've got to keep it out of the open meeting.
Right, but that's only assuming that we tell you. Right?
Right.
Well, if we don't tell him, he can't fix it.
Right.
Or attempt to.
Right.
Any other comments on that question?
This can be a great opportunity to this is a significant evaluation, and kudos to you for taking the time to fill it out. Now that you can see where things are bubbling up, when we're together in the summer at our board retreat, that might be a time too where okay, what's bubbled up? What are the actions that the board wishes to take? We can have that facilitated conversation then too and be efficient with it. That's another way to go as well.
I'm going to move into question number 14. The board ensures the district strategic plan, vision and mission statement, equity statement, governance, policies, roles and responsibilities, policies, roles and responsibilities, policies, and student achievement expectations are met.
Mine says expectations are met, but they're not. We have these wonderful missions and these vision statements and all that kind of stuff. It says what we're gonna do, but the goals aren't met. And that's what the way the thing reads. Expectations are met. Seems like we could be more, more specific. I know in my job, we used to say, okay, we're gonna increase this by 5% or something like that. We just have this blank statement that doesn't call out any specifics, and then truthfully, we don't meet the statements.
And that's why on number 16, because that talks about the expectations. It's like pulling that aspect out.
Right.
And having that follow through to see the progression, to have the vigor, to have it hopefully get improvement.
It goes back to what we were talking about in regards to, especially this question because it has so much in it.
Yeah,
It does. You're talking about meeting student achievement expectations. I think Orlando has said it before, to do that for every student every day, that's a very lofty goal.
Yes.
And so, no, we're not meeting that expectation by far. If we look at our data, it has nothing to do with COVID. It wasn't the last year, the year before, so we're not meeting that expectation. So then building off what Ruth is saying, we need to set a goal for ourselves as a board, a SMART goal as it pertains to pulling out. We know that there's opportunity for student achievement expectations. And how do we hold ourselves accountable?
Yeah, because it's the second question that use the word ensure. How do we as a board ensure that takes place? How do we as a board make sure that it's being, that it's happening? So that's why I put, that's an area of opportunity. Because we're not making sure that it's happening, because if we were making sure it's happening, then it would be happening.
Yeah, I think that's where also, the board employs me, and I've heard, this is the second conversation we've had in the last 2 months around the specifics around measurables. Clearly that's an action opportunity for us, around a scorecard that can be out there and available on the website on a regular basis. So that there's metrics that we're looking at consistently that are not changing over time so that we can see movement or lack of movement. We don't have that out there.
Yeah, this question should be divided up into about 4 or 5 questions. And ensures is probably not the best word. I mean, we as a group can say, Chris, make this happen.
You know, and as a part of the equity cohort work too, the idea of, you know, do we want to peg everything directly to state targets and state required outcomes, you know? And so as a part of the equity statement, it's like, well, instead we have to be able to set targets and play our own game. So clearly it needs to be connected because we're accountable to the state and our accreditation, but just having those measures that we're comfortable with, that we believe captures the essence of the work. They need to be academic measures, but it's also above and beyond that. There also have to be social, emotional measures, have to be engagement measures that help to quantify the work.
And one of the things that we heard tonight is from most every elementary schools, we're all over that equity statement. We're all over that. We're doing this, that. It was a general statement. Can we ensure that they're doing it correctly? Can we ensure that they are really connecting our equity statement to what they're doing?
Well, I think it's always a, you know, a know better, do better opportunity, right? So I think that equity statement, the vision and the mission, they serve to focus the work that's going on. And so then I think it always just, what is the connection? Are we doing better than we were before? Can we show gains in those areas? And, you know, the equity statement, it was approved in August. It's been with us now for 7 months.
But I think instead of saying that we are going to ensure. You know,
It's the board.
Maybe we should have a report, maybe we should have a review. But you know, we can't ensure unless we get more and more information. We can have you ensure that, because you could look at it every day.
Well, we do get reports provided to us. They're large and they have a lot of detail in them. But it's picking out the pieces of those reports that we want to measure by.
So I agree. This is one of the questions that we had the other for the superintendent. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Well, the questions are over 4 years old. I'd be happy to ask anybody else to take on the task to get it right for next year.
You know,
Mark Ruth down, taking on the task.
I hope. I mean, if this is what we're gonna use as our way of evaluating us, it needs, in my opinion, needs to be a little more specific about what we're doing. Instead of, so much of it is, yeah, Chris does. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's a good evaluation.
So if anything, it needs to evolve a little bit to be more forward centric.
And I think probably even as we continue this work, it may evolve even in the future. So I think probably where we were at the time when this was redone, it's kind of, yeah, the consensus at that time, but as we're learning more, being more conscious about how we're work. Okay, so the next one we really get into. Okay, question number 48.
Which
The
one?
48. The board, in dealing with personnel complaints or concerns, will adhere to the district's chain of command.
$48.
48.
I am.
Scroll.
Do what? 41, 42, almost there.
So I will say, you know, whenever I hear any complaints or anything,
I always try to make sure to direct people to go through their building and work their way up to work their way up to Chris if need be. Does anybody feel like we don't do that?
Well, my comment was basically what I shared during our board meetings, whether it's open session and closed sessions about different things. I think we do a good job of talking to that kid right about it. The things we don't hear, we don't know nothing about. If we're as a board doing it. So basically what I said is, I can only speak to the complaints that are shared at board meetings during our open and our closed sessions that this is done. I like to believe that this is also done when all complaints are, with all complaints. So basically, I don't know what side conversations are going on with board members and someone that kind of gives direct advice without going through the training. So I can only go by what I basically heard, that that's also being done with the complaints that we don't share with the group, if that makes sense. So I think it's overall.
So I guess my question is, are you concerned that there's anybody on our board just going, telling personnel to go straight to Chris?
That somebody's not doing it, no. But I could not. I did not choose to perform poorly. I put needs. What's the performance meets expectations most of the time.
I want to restate, it's very important for us to make sure that we have them, follow the chain of command. I always try to make sure to tell people, and then, tell them, say, if you don't get an answer, then come back. But
It seems a lot of times, and I'll say up front here, the 6 elementary teacher principals we have are just very approachable, very professional, and very open to anybody coming to them. So sometimes I don't get it, but you have a parent that'll say, I need to talk to you about this. What did you talk to the principal? Oh, no, really. I mean, she's a good person to talk to.
Right.
And let me know what happens. But I think you'll have a good experience. And then they have to go through a lot of emotional things to go walk up to the principal of the school. Oh my God. But once you start talking to them, you find out that one, they're interested, two, they're not going to laugh at you or throw you out the door. And that's what a lot of people fear. So I want you to be my advocate. You got to be able to say, no, you need to go do this. This is for your kid. Now I'll be here and you can call me and tell me what happened. But you have to do that yourself.
Right. Well, I can't fix the problem. They can.
Right. I mean, as I say, they are so approachable. I can't see how anyone would say, oh my God, I can't go talk to Tim Stryker. Oh, geez. You can.
Yep. But usually when there's complaints, it's emotional.
Right.
So people,
right.
When the emotion is involved, that's really what. Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard for people to do that because it's about their kid, not my kid. It's their kid.
Oh. Okay. I'll move on to 52. The board will hold itself accountable to the citizens of the district by focusing on the strategic plan, vision and mission statement, equity statement, governance policies, roles and responsibility policies of the district. Everybody loves that question because it's got everything rolled into one. Any comments? So with this wording, how are we holding ourselves accountable? I don't know how we're doing that. I guess it would have to be if we didn't agree with what the different things say. We have to hold ourselves accountable versus saying, hey, Chris, you should make them more. You know, hey.
Yeah, but I'm saying, how are we doing that? That we can rate ourselves on this. We're not currently doing this.
Well, I think we just kind of talked about this earlier that, you know, we said we don't meet expectations here, yet we still have the same stuff in place.
But yes, now we're talking about things.
Right.
That like in this, for me, the reason I rated sometimes, most of the time,
We're moments we meet most, some of the time.
most of the some
Probably
of the time,
some,
some,
yeah.
because I am having a hard time understanding how we hold ourselves accountable and who is giving us feedback besides us. And, you know, we do get some concerns from the community. But who's really giving us that feedback and rating us on our own performance besides us?
None of it to reevaluate what it really should be and what it should say. Any other comments on that one? Question 58. The board will annually report to the community the status of education in the district.
Okay.
So I think Ruth says it, you know, it gets done, but it's not really us
Not
that's
us.
doing it.
Right, and Chris does the end of the year thing. I think, you know, it would take some work, but I think it would be something if we actually try to do this, you know.
Right.
Because he's the face, he holds that thing at the end of the year, you know, some of us,
The state of Ritenour.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's a great thing to do, but, you know, I think about when we go to the MSBA conferences and the NSBA conferences, lots of times it's the boards who are given the, you know, when you know, that are giving the class or whatever. It's not the superintendent, it's not the different positions, administration. I mean, most of it is, I think, but there are some that you go to and the school board members actually get it. So,
So in order for us to perform this, or are you saying that the board should do the state of written instead of superintendent?
Ken, I'm sorry.
Do you think the board should do the state of Ritenour instead of?
I think we should be a part of it. I don't want to take it away from Chris, because he does such a great job. It's good for the people to see him, but
Or is it that not, we will annually report to the community, but we will make sure that there is an annual report that is provided? And then we can still participate, but like in something like that, but the wording just kind of be more about we will participate, or we will make sure that that report goes out to the community.
Sometimes just being there.
Yeah.
You know, if we're there, the Board of Education is here, Chris is going to give the report. Are there any questions? At that point, community can say, I don't have a question for him, but I got a question for the board.
right, I think a lot of people aren't going to ask Chris questions because they see him as the head of, you know.
Right.
But people from, you know, when you're active in PTO and they know you, or, you know, whatever else you're active in, they may easily ask you, and feel comfortable asking you where they wouldn't feel comfortable asking Chris.
I'm sorry, I was making hand signals during the meeting.
I know,
when
I
you all were
saw.
talking, and I told the group here, because this is board specific, I told them they could be okay.
Sure, yeah, sure.
You're not hanging out here.
You can stay, you know, we love an audience, but.
Yeah, you don't have to leave just because we started.
You all are welcome to leave if you wish. This is the last item on the agenda, and really board specific stuff. So we've got a busy day starting at 7:30 in the morning, so.
That late? Hey.
Lisa, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Hey, 7:30, yeah. I want to come work for you.
Well, the funny thing is I was sitting here and I was trying to be polite, and I was already turned around, and go, will you guys all go home, please?
Well,
Before
it's
they have
Friday,
their
you
head on the
know.
table,
it's-
yeah.
it's-
They're like, oh. Lisa,
Bye.
did you have anything else you wanted to share?
Thank you. Thank you.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to share? And I couldn't, you looked like you had something to say. I didn't know if you were reacting that way or.
Thank you, Lee.
Hi, guys. All right, question 60. We want to know why Stacy was not.
Why do you not approve?
The district calendar.
It's fine. It's the district calendar.
And she
There's
does
no
not
60
approve
you're
the
talking about.
superintendent.
Woo,
contract.
yeah. It's always a hot topic.
Okay, so, question 70, again, we have our grouping of verbiage there. And it's related to the adoptive fiscally responsible budget. And really, to be honest with you, it should just be, do we adopt the board will adopt a fiscally responsible budget. You put the opportunity is to provide.
Yeah, at each meeting, we have that opportunity.
What do you mean by that?
What?
What did you mean by that?
What did I mean by my answer?
Yeah.
The board will adopt a fiscally responsible budget based on district blah, 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 blah. Monitor. Every meeting, we have that ability to monitor the fiscal health of the district. Every meeting we do. If we don't think something's right, or we want to question something, that's the time. I mean, we can do it any time, but I'm just saying, every meeting, we approve whatever is brought to us and the warrants and all that stuff.
Right. Any other comments on that one? And that's it. You want to go different?
I don't even know what number it is on here, maybe it's 30.
Okay, what's the question?
About, encourages open discussion, is respectful and dignified manner. I put most, but I think we could improve on this process because sometimes we just speak out and, you know, especially since we're on YouTube now, you know, maybe we need to raise our hand when we want to say something, or you understand what I'm saying? Because when people talk over each other, then you can't hear what either one of them are saying. So maybe there's a better way to do that.
Sometimes it's hard to hear it here and here and there as well.
Where you can.
Right.
Anybody else have any other ones they'd like to talk about? Dr. Stewart, thank you so much for all your hard work for tonight. Can't wait for next week.
Just in general, a general thought is I've always said it's the discussion that's meaningful to me. The question sparks the discussion, whether they're a good question or we improve on the question. It's hearing what Lee says, say and Ruth and Stacy and you and Orlando and Penny, hearing everybody's opinion. That gives me pause to think about another way. I didn't think of that. I didn't think what I didn't even occur to me. And sparking that discussion amongst the group is good. I think we have a good group here that brings to the table, as it were, different opinions, different perspectives. Very good questions. And that's what it's about. And that's why I think we have a very good board right now in that. And these 70 semi questions spark those thoughts. Yeah, that might not have been worded correctly, and it might not be the way we want to see it or anything, but a discussion needs to come back.
So I will say you are correct, because I think a couple of years ago, based on this, we came out with our goal of the budget, and that budget was, we readjusted how we dealt with the budget, and we can see that it made a huge improvement to that. So just something to think about is when we have our retreat, is what is that next goal, and what do we want to see? I think we know what do we want it to be, where we want it to be, based around what is our growth, what are our numbers that we're looking at.
You know, speaking to number 30, I wrote that when I first joined the board 3 years ago, this is one of the first things that I learned that helped me to feel more comfortable about sharing my ideas or how I feel about a particular subject or topic. And I think that you do a good job of encouraging people to dialogue. And then you don't feel like, and I speak for me, I don't feel like it was a stupid question or that was a waste of time. Shut up and let's move on, So I think I was fully, But yeah, I do believe that the board does a really good job of encouraging open discussion and respect. If you feel like your opinion.
Does anybody have any other feedback they'd like to share it on? Besides the fact that, could I get it out? Could we get it back to the quarter? So, yeah, so we're not doing 35 questions.
Yeah.
It's like 45 minutes.
I wish it was actually me too.
I called Doug and said, hey, Doug, I'm doing it this morning. And then my husband's like, we have to go. I'm like, hey, I haven't finished yet. I don't know if I can make it by 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I got halfway through and had to go to class, and I thought I saved it all and came back afterwards.
All right, well, we will make sure.
I did this almost twice.
We will make sure that it gets on the quarter again, and we're going. No more, throw it all, and that goes for both. Okay. You want them on the same quarter or alternate? What? You want them on the same month or alternate?
The one question I want.
Let me ask you guys that. So Michelle's question was, I'm sorry.
Student programs, that one question, 34. The board approves district policies and expectations for student programs. Is student programs like IWC, like the big stuff, or is it like athletics, activities, any of that stuff?
I think it's instructional and like athletics and activities. I think it's all of it.
All of it.
That was the way I interpreted it.
That was something I wasn't sure about. I think I put that in there, not sure what the student program.
So Michelle's question is, would you like it alternating? So like we do like some superintendent, and then the next quarter we do board, and then the next quarter we do superintendent, or do you want to do?
So we're doing half of it at a time.
Tell me again.
Okay, if you're gonna do them quarterly, so you got 2 evaluations, you wanna do quarterly. So you do like a board in January, and superintendent in February. And then the next quarter, okay, so you got January, February, board in April, superintendent in May. Okay, so if you're gonna do each one quarterly, you want them in the same month quarterly, or like next to each other, or every other quarter? You know what I mean? Or do you just want them both on the same meeting?
Do you have an opinion?
One month, one day.
I got 1 month, and like splitting them up between months.
You can still do them quarterly, just not in the same meeting. It doesn't have to be in the same month. Yeah, it doesn't have to be in the same meeting. You can still do it quarterly.
I'm fine either way, whatever works. It's not all 12 months.
Right.
Yeah. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I can still do it.
And I did have one last thing. For me, I know we are bored, but I think it's also beneficial to get feedback from others. So I know that's where you said before, you don't necessarily feel comfortable giving feedback. I don't know if that's something that can be done across, like with the adult team, like a collaborative. And I'm not saying every question, certain things that may align back to maybe like a student programs one or something, just to kind of give us a pulse check on like how do people see and supporting. Yeah, how does this fit? How do they rate us?
How does the team feel about that? If it's something the whole board is interested in doing, we could be prepared to do that. It's just where do you all want to be with that?
I personally think that we've talked about this before, but it was that it comes back in the survey and from the community, like there's 1 or 2 board questions. But I personally would rather get feedback from people outside of us. You know, even if it's like. She's talking about the staff though. How does the staff see us? Right. I like that idea because, I mean, I do. Besides, we're the board, if we don't like it, we just throw it out.
Change that answer. I would rather hear from our stakeholders, people that vote for us.
You know.
Okay.
So I think that is where it comes from the survey that goes out to the community. There's a few questions, am I right, Doug? Or, yeah, there's a few questions that. Oh, you're talking about the survey, the big one that goes out. Yeah.
If there is a survey that were to go out to the staff, and there was a question or two about the Board of Education in there, I'm fine with that. But sending out a survey to the staff about us, I don't think would really be helpful. Because if we don't do exactly the way they want, well, then they don't like it. If we do everything they want, then we're okay.
Right, and I think that they were also focusing more on like the adult team that kind of interacts with us more. Am I correct in that, or were you saying all staff? I mean, I was talking about the adult team. Yeah, I was thinking about that. It's kind of the people that really deal with us. His team.
Anything that could help us get better, let's try.
Yeah. What'd you say? Anything that helps us get better. Let's try it. So let's start with adult. Adult team, not the adult team. And we already do get feedback from our community. It's called election day. Yeah, that's true. They don't like us, they don't re-elect us, plain and simple. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right, we'll move on to our policy edit.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Lona. So board members, there's one policy edit and it's a cross-reference to 2 policies, GBBE and GDBDA. This is a practice that's been in place that wasn't in policy. So just as I, answered Lisa's question, vast majority of policy edits, they come through MSBA and they're the result of statutory change and lawsuits. This is a practice that's been in place, but it wasn't reflected anywhere in policy, and it impacts support staff. So the language is, in order to be paid for a holiday, an employee must be paid for both the workday preceding and the workday following a holiday. Employees would be paid by using available sick, personal, family illness, bereavement, or vacation days. If an absence on a workday, either preceding or following the holiday, is unpaid, then the employee shall not be paid for the holiday. So it's just very practical language that is pretty pragmatic. So a person, if they have sick, if they have personal, if they have family illness, or if they have vacation days, those could apply. But if they're on unpaid status, they would be unpaid throughout the entire vacation. So that's been the practice. It's not a situation where vacation days are on a different status or something from the remainder of the days. You have to either be paid or have those days as stated in this policy: sick, personal, family illness, bereavement, or vacation. You have to have those in your bank, have to be able to utilize those in order to be compensated over vacation. That's what's been happening. And it's not anything that has been changed, even going during back to Doug Baum's tenure. This is how it's been. It's just an effort to be more transparent and put into policy in case that's ever challenged. We've not been challenged. We just need to have it in policy.
So just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, if I take off the Friday before President's Day, and I put it in as a vacation day, I would get my vacation day paid and my holiday paid?
You can, if you have a vacation day to use.
As support staff.
Yes. Yeah.
This is,
Not
this,
teachers.
this is pretty well common amongst hourly people.
I was gonna say, well, I know it's,
Yeah,
our
hourly
business
employees, you gotta be here the day before, the day after, or have a day off to take.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and Ruth's comment too was this applies directly to support staff. Teachers, administrators, what it looks like is those days, a day off attached to a holiday would not be approved. That's what that looks like. So this policy specifically impacts support staff.
That'd be fine.
okay. Any other questions about it?
Oh, and just another quick piece too. So I have a policy committee, but didn't take this one to the policy committee. Took it through the support staff advisory committee that met a couple of weeks back. Got their feedback on it.
Do we still have people on that?
Yes, yeah.
Ruth attended, I was there. Support staff meeting 24th.
Ruth and Penny are on it?
Yes.
Were you guys there?
I was not.
I was there, yeah.
I was at that one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Actually, Dwight brought it. Dwight was the one who presented it.
Right.
The agenda for next week?
Okay, board members, the agenda for next week, so it's 6 p.m. start. We've got secondary buildings and we'll be back in this space. So 6 p.m. start. We also have a school of the month. It's the Marion Eagles, and we heard from Mr. Ewing tonight. I look forward to hearing about the great work that's going on at Marion. We'll have the standard set of reports. I hope to be able to give an update on House Bill 942 and also Senate Bill 55. You know, there's one piece of damaging education legislation that has made it through. It's House Bill 349, sponsored by Phil Cristofanelli from St. Peter's. It's an educational savings account, which is a voucher program, allows people to pay into an educational service organization and then take out of that educational service organization to pay for tuition to the school. $50 million hit with an escalation clause that grows the impact of that program.
The Senate.
It passed through the House. It's on its way to the Senate.
Okay.
The Senate was in recess for a period of time due to COVID. But Senate is taking it up. It has not made it through the Senate yet.
Can we let the teachers know about SB 55? The reason I asked is because my daughter heard it when it showed that it went through the House. She said, "Mom, isn't this the thing we don't want?" So I just wondered if it was, you know, something that went out to all the teachers.
Oh, no. I haven't passed that out to the teachers. It's gone out to the information has gone out to the LAC, but I haven't put it out to the whole staff.
Can we do that without giving them?
I think you have to be, one of the things you have to be cautious about is you have to be cautious about using devices to advocate one way or another.
Right.
So there's a way for it to be done. I can look into it.
Yeah, I can just set awareness. Here's awareness of these two, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'll speak on Senate Bill 55, speak on House Bill 942. That's the accreditation system bill as well. When we get to business items, Evelyn Gilliam, Miss Gilliam will be coming back to present to the board on tech competencies. 100% of buildings completed their tech competencies. So Miss Gilliam will give an update on that. I shared an update on a construction proposal. This is the north parking lot at Pratt's. So it is a Prop S project. The expansion of the north parking lot at Pratt's, which is a kind of a log jam right now at Dismissal. There's not much parking for staff and the community on the front of Pratt's. This would more than double the size of that north parking lot. So the bid opening is taking place, and we want to bring a recommendation to the board next Thursday for that parking lot expansion. The thinking was we knew the meeting tonight was going to be a long meeting. So I'll share more information with the board tomorrow in the Friday memo around this project. And if there are questions that you have around the project, if we could engage around those questions before it would come to you next week for your consideration.
You already sent it to us, right?
I put it out in an update yesterday, and we were waiting for the bid opening for one of the projects, which will happen tomorrow.
There's something with that, not about crafts, but I was over at their iPhone today. It was 3:33. And there was a line of cars up the side street and down Lackland, and it's like, what in the world?
You should see when you have the whole school filled in.
And it occurred to me that as much as we have a problem over at Pratt's with parking and cars and parents and all that, because they're back all the way up from the school to Lackland Road, and the cars were starting to go down Lackland Road as well at dismissal time, and it seems like we need to at least look at that, because that could end up getting someone, in an accident.
Yeah, there's an Iveland staff member that is actually like a crossing guard 2 blocks away from the school to control the flow of traffic. There have been eyes all over that process at Iveland. And the answer to that, like expanding the asphalt and parking lot in the back of the building, the problem with doing that is you end up taking the green space away from the kids. So I agree that it's an issue.
But I will tell you one thing. Go up there and stand in the back and watch them actually pull through.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
gone in no time.
I mean,
The problem that we have is that parents or families will go up and sometimes sit there 45 minutes to an hour before.
Oh, they do it every school. They do it every school.
And they sit there and wait. And as soon as they get everybody through, it's, Marion's another.
Oh, at Booter, they did that. I mean, they sit down at that one part of the parking lot, and on good weather, you'd see a crowd of 30, 40 parents out talking and everything.
Yeah.
And then they get there an hour and a half before school is out.
Right.
Yeah.
And
But that's a
within,
good thing. You want the parents.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and within 10 minutes, everybody's gone.
Yeah, it's
You
amazing.
sit
Like
there
I
and
was
in
at
10 minutes after the kids come out, empty.
I was at Ivan's one time and I was just like amazed. I was like, whoop, everybody's gone. Like,
But
yeah.
it's just the thought that, before we have them backing up and down Lackland Road and everything, maybe there's a,
Marion has them out onto Midland
yeah, I know,
and then down.
and all the way up
Marion's
to,
really bad.
all the way up to Breckenridge and all that stuff, but
So I don't
just a
know.
thought.
Okay.
I know, I don't want to take up any more green space, I really don't. I hated it when we did it over there at Marvin. But, until they make more dirt, it's what we got.
So, so the Pratt's parking lot is the project. The other project is the culinary lab here in this building. So we need to spend some local dollars for infrastructure so that we can spend Perkins dollars on equipment. We did take a look at trying to be creative in a project at the Handy House across from Ritenour Middle. Dwight got involved in that. Michael Smith got involved in that. This, is a project that's critical. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's a low dollar project. to make the space ready. So those will be coming to you next week in terms of a proposal. We will have some personnel recommendations in the form of a personnel list. And you can see the 3 items, 3 program evals in the items on the consent agenda. The World Languages Department, Social Studies Department, and then Ms. Hahn worked with Ms. Adams to do a program evaluation in alternative education here in the district, and we'll speak about some of the opportunities that exist in alternative education that we have here. We will have 2 closed session items for the board next week around personnel, and that's the agenda.
Will we get more information about the sprinklers that are the sprinkler, the thing that's going to cost so much over at
Yeah, board members, that we're working with the Missouri American Water to tie into the water main underneath Midland. The cost for that was more significant than what's expected. When you and what's needed is to tie into the water main, the sprinkler system, so that the building can be sprinkled. It's a closed bid process, and you have to work through Missouri American Water. So the scope of the work is done. They put the bid out to 5 contractors through them, and then you just get one price. And so we challenged the price with Walker, and we lost. So it's something that's going to be necessary.
How did we not know about this additional cost? How did we not know that was going to be part of that?
Well, we knew that we were going to have to be able to tie into the main, but the cost to do it, the fact that they reported additional difficulty, that this is a main that is difficult to tie into, that was unforeseen condition.
out of our control, really.
Yes.
They go out and bid it.
Okay. Anything else? All right.